Grid is live. Initiate.
Excellent!
I'm not interrupting anything, am I?
Bogus.
Are you telling me that you built a time machine? Out of a DeLorean?
My name's Norman Bates.
Oh, man, I'm so excited. I'm in, Mom.
Merry Christmas, movie home! We came, we saw, we kicked his ass.
I'm just not the hero type, clearly.
Everything's under control. Situation normal.
Oh, well. Let me go in and say hi.
Hail to the king, baby.
Well, hello, everyone. It is Sunday, January 3rd, 2021. That's right. It is our first live PJCN show of 2021, and I can think of no, that's not true, because Home Alone was on January 1st. As you can see, it's already been a long, arduous year, and there's still 360 plus days to go.
Happy New Year! Woo!
Oh, that was fun.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Maxwell Haddad, and this is the Sunday Evening Unwind. With me, of course, is the namesake of the channel himself, Mr. PJ Campbell. How are you tonight, Mr. Campbell?
Chilling. Like you said, it's been a long, arduous 3 days already of 2021. The president continues to be a complete and utter fucknut in public, and you just can't wait another 17 days for this to hopefully all come to a fucking end. But, outside of that, I get to spend time with you guys talking our favorite things of 2020, which is much more exciting than looking back at all the bad things. So that's a nice feeling.
I agree. And shout out to everyone in the chat. I see Buck. I see Coach. I see Mike Messina, Chris Taylor. I see Buck. I see Brandy Parker.
Matt Whitehurst in the house.
Matt Whitehurst.
Turi.
Oh, look. There's a Wild Dan Nye in the chat. That's so nice of him to be in the chat.
What a handsome man.
If only he would ever bother to show up on one of these shows.
I know. What a loser. God.
And yes, fuck the dude who stole Sully's shit.
Yeah,
I could not agree more.
Swear to God, if I ever meet the person who stole Sully's stuff, we're going to have a real problem.
Oh, Brandy's already going to make me emotional. She says the favorite thing she watched in 2020 was the PJ Campbell. Stop,
so
Brandy.
Sweet.
Stop.
God damn it.
It's too kind. And I will say, I know Brandy watched Tombstone today and absolutely loved it. So that made me happy when I saw that.
Made me happy too, man, because she's been going through a lot of this stuff, and she comments on the list that I made, and I don't know if she's been doing for years.
She has.
And so I always like seeing the stuff that she says, because it's always really interesting. Like, she didn't love The Searchers, which is considered one of the all-time great classic westerns, but at the same time, that's great. Like, someone who doesn't necessarily like it, but at least she watched it. Like, that's kind of information that I like seeing, and I like seeing actual discourse. It's almost like I had a thread about actual film discourse earlier in the week that I found very important, and how we're going to drop underrated and overrated from the terms of things that we talk about.
I completely agree. I love differing opinions. I think it makes the world go round and can foster a great discussion, and everyone has different tastes, as long as that discussion is respectful, which Brandy always is. And Coach says his favorite movie of 2020 was Chris Clark Scares. I thought about putting it on my list, but if I made a list of my favorite short films, that would maybe be on it. But look, it's not just PJ and I tonight. We have two other folks joining us tonight. First of all, is a guy who's with us here pretty much every Sunday night for the Unwind. He's one of my favorite people. He loves beer and dogs and horror films. He has a nice
beard.
And a very nice beard. It's Tim Franco.
Hi, Tim.
Hello, people.
Oh, that's really nice to hear. Brandy said on the POV stream, everyone has been donating to get Sully more cards.
Oh,
nice. I was probably going to
figure
something out to help him out. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll
you want to introduce our next guest, PJ?
Well, look, I don't know why I just called him a loser, but I've been waiting for this man to be back on this channel for a little bit. He's been dealing with some personal stuff, but now I'm happy to say that the most handsome man in the world, that's what we're going to call him, is back. His name is Handsome Dan I. Hi, Dan.
Oh, hello, guys.
What's up,
Not much. I had to crawl out from under that bus. I got thrown under not a whole 2-3 minutes ago. So
I know.
If he ever showed up, normally I work Sunday nights, so
I know
it's one of those things that I'll show up when I can't. Ooh, can I get a cat? Nope. She's too spoiler. I thought I had her, but no, happy to be here because it's normally I don't get a chance to pop in on Sundays because I'm not at home during this, so it's really, really nice, and I'm happy about it. So
I like it, man. I'm glad to have you back.
yes, good to be back.
Maxwell, before we jump into all of the fun things that we're going to talk about, is there anything going on the channel?
Yeah, we have a couple of things coming up over the next few days. Tomorrow night is Monday night, which means it's watch along night. And in celebration of the return of the hockey season, we are watching one of my personal favorites. It is Miracle, starring Kurt Russell, directed by Gavin O'Connor. This film is available, I believe, on both Netflix and Disney Plus. So you have multiple options to stream this film. It's really great and uplifting and so beautifully made, and I'm excited to watch it with everyone tomorrow. I know you love it as well, PJ.
It's one of my favorite movies. I love hockey, and so it's always fun to revisit this one. I think it's one of Kurt Russell's best performances as well.
I agree.
And it's just what a way to go into 2021 with like the hockey season coming back, and now we get to watch, in my opinion, one of the all-time great sports films too. Like, it's not just a great movie; it's a great, just a great sports movie. It's a great movie altogether. But this is one of the all-time great sports films.
I agree. Then on Wednesday night, Suddenly Soundtracks makes its return for 2021 with a very special episode. It's an edition of Added to Playlist called Our Favorite Songs of All Time. That's right. We will be listing our top 10 favorite songs of all time, or at least what our favorite songs of all time are currently. This was an arduous task. So many songs I love had to be left off, but on the show will be myself, PJ, Tim Franco, Jen Kemp, host Chris Clark, and special guest Max Bartos, who, if you watched the Suddenly Soundtracks of Sing Street, you're familiar with. He is a young actor who was in Sing Street off-Broadway. He brings a great perspective, a youthful perspective. I'm not even sure if he's turned 18 yet, so to get his thoughts will be excellent. And also, you know, he's a musician and an actor, and so I'm sure he'll bring a lot of cool insight into our choices and have some fascinating choices as well.
I still hate Chris Clark. That's all there is to it. This list was the worst.
Max, I also did look it up. I can confirm Miracle is on both Disney Plus.
Excellent. I thought so. Netflix. It was the last time I looked, but as so often happens, we'll pick a movie for watch along, knowing it's on streaming, and then like the day before we're going to do it, it gets taken off those services. So, and speaking of watch alongs, Friday night we are watching Steve Jobs, starring Michael Fassbender and Kate Winslet, written by Aaron Sorkin, directed by Danny Boyle. I know this is one of PJ's favorite movies. I love it as well. And we picked this because we're going to be going on a bit of an Aaron Sorkin kick, because the following Monday, we don't have art for it yet, but we mentioned this before. We'll be doing a watch along selected by one of our executive producers, Brandon Buckingham, and that is Moneyball. So Friday and Monday, we'll be doing Aaron Sorkin films, and we may have another Aaron Sorkin film.
Can I announce it? Can I announce it?
Go ahead. It's your channel.
So Friday night, the night after the inauguration.
Two nights after.
2 nights after. Yeah. Well, I just meant in general. The watch-along night after the inauguration. Whatever night that is for everyone, 2 nights later, we're going to be watching The American President, which is one of my favorite movies. Another one of my favorite movies. It's a great romantic comedy. It's a great political type film, and I'm just super excited. Annette Bening and Michael Douglas are incredible in it. It's also got Martin Sheen and Michael J. Fox, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah. So we have a lot of Sorkin-penned films that we're doing watch-alongs of this month. It just sort of worked out that way.
Yeah, we did.
And PJ and I have watched Steve Jobs together before, so that'll be fun. A couple other things we have coming up. On next Saturday, we're going to be doing a final PJCN Water Cooler Chat Mandalorian edition, where we sort of give our macro thoughts on the season as a whole, as well as talk about what we're expecting and anticipating in Star Wars television coming up over the next few years. Obviously, when Disney had their Investors Day, we did a very special explosive Unwind talking about everything that was announced. Because there was so much stuff, we didn't necessarily get to go into detail about everything. So that show will be specifically focused on upcoming Star Wars TV. And then the following Saturday, starting January 16th, PJCN Water Cooler Chat switches over to being a WandaVision talkback show. I know myself, PJ, and Sully will be on those, most likely Dwayne Burke and Jake Berlin as well, and I'm sure there will be some other special guests to talk about every episode of WandaVision and break it down week by week like we did with The Mandalorian throughout the season, and that is our goal with the Water Cooler Chat. whenever a show ends, it'll be about another show. And there's lots of fun, nerdy shows coming up to talk all about and probably break down into way too much detail. And yet, those Mandalorian shows were some of our most viewed shows, so you guys obviously like them.
Yep.
Final upcoming thing, you all know Book Nook. This is coming Tuesday, January 26th. We picked a date late into the month, so everyone has ample time to get a copy of the book. It's the first in the Ranger's Apprentice series called The Runes of Gorland by John Flanagan. Go to your local independent bookstore, or you can go to bookshop.org or other websites that help you acquire them from your local independent bookstores. I believe in supporting small businesses, especially now. Get a copy of the book, read it, and then myself and my co-host Dwayne Burke will be breaking down the book, talking about the themes, the narrative, the characters, etc. And that's sure to be fun. And on that episode, we'll announce what our next month's book will be, and we're going to do that every month. Finally, before we get into unwinding, we have to give a special shout out to our patrons. We have 3 executive producers, Brandy Parker, Brandon Buckingham, and Ricardo Franco. And we have a bunch of other producers, Mike Kay, Molly Damon, Jake Berlin, Stephen White, Anton Putra, Patricia Carrillo, The Youth Critic, and Bador. Thank you guys so much for your continued support. We couldn't do this without you. And we have so much fun stuff coming up for you in the weeks to come. If you're not already a patron and you want to be, check out our Patreon. We have tiers that are different and right for everyone, with stuff like access to our Discord, exclusive monthly commentary tracks for our $10 and up members. The $25 members get to pick Suddenly soundtracks to do this month. And I know that because Buck was a gold member before upgrading to a platinum member, next week we'll be doing Suddenly soundtracks of his choice, which is Rent. I love Rent, especially the music of Rent. So I know myself and my wife Ellie and a couple other people will be on that with Chris Clark to break down Rent song by song. I think PJ is going to be on it.
I'm going to be there.
And also coming in the next week to week and a half for our $5 and up members, we are going to have Bloop Bloop, which is bloopers from the Holiday Box. Believe me, there are a lot of bloopers.
Yeah.
So that's going to be fun for everyone. And we do have a Streamlabs. Speaking personally, I hope Peter doesn't get mad. If you're looking to donate tonight, maybe go over to POV and donate so we can help Sean get back his Magic the Gathering card and other stuff that was stolen from him. But we do have a Streamlabs if you want to help us out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know if anyone's interested, but I think that I think we might also do a water cooler for Cobra Kai season 3. I was thinking about doing like a one-off review since it all dropped on Netflix.
I also we talked about doing a review of the first Star Wars High Republic book, The Light of the Jedi, which comes out on Tuesday. My copy's set to arrive on Tuesday. So maybe in a week to a week and a half after we've all had time to read the book, we can do that as well. Yeah. So yeah, water cooler lets us be flexible. Look, it's Dwayne.
Hi, Dwayne.
Book Nook co-host, our water cooler chat co-host, one of my favorite people in the world. What's up, Dwayne?
What's up, Dwayne?
But why, Steven? but why?
Cats is great to watch if you are inebriated and all.
But I was going to say that's still on the Patreon. That PJ, there's that disclaimer that PJ won't do it. I think eventually we'll wear him down.
If you're open to it, and in the proper environment, Cats can be amazing. It was my favorite movie I saw in theaters last year because of the experience I had seeing it.
That's fair.
So look, we're here to talk about our favorites of 2020. But before we do that, I always like to go around and ask about everyone's week in pop culture, what they watched, what they read, what they played. What I will say is this. If there's anything you watched that is ending up on one of your lists because you're catching up or rewatching things, skip that if you plan to talk about it on your list. But if there's other things you watched, caught up on, read, played, etc., tell us about it, what you thought, recommend it, etc. And then we'll get started with some of our top 10s and whatnot, and celebrating the year in 2020 in entertainment and all that fun stuff. Why don't we start with Tim?
I've been playing a lot of like you just mentioned, kind of like catch up and rewatch of like things that I anticipated being on my list and things that I hadn't seen yet. So I've watched a lot of stuff that will show up and may show up in my honorable mentions. So if we're talking honorable mentions, I won't talk about them right now.
Okay.
So yeah, I didn't really honestly like watch a whole lot outside of those things in preparation for this show. And since there were some like things that I had missed, I wanted to make sure that I finally watched them and gave them a shot. And there were several that I was like, man, I can't believe I took so long to watch this, but I freaking love it. There's one specifically that's very high on my list that I only watched this week and I loved.
I'm really excited to hear what that is. How about you, Dan? By the way, I love your shirt. That's an adorable community shirt. One might say that it's cool.
Cool. I love it's a great deep cut from that actual episode, and I'm very happy about that and impressed. Rewatching, I'll cobble together. I probably won't make a top 10, but I'll throw out honorable mentions because it's been an edition today. But I rewatched Logan Lucky, and I don't think I'd watched that since it came out. And I remember not being a fan when I came out, and then I'm like, I gave this movie I had a bad habit for a long time of if a movie didn't quite hit my expectations or wasn't what I was anticipating it to be, I didn't enjoy it as much. And so on second viewings, I'm finding myself enjoying movies, like other movies that I judge like that a lot better. So that was one I was really happy to rewatch, and I really enjoyed it second time around.
Yeah, I love that movie. Is it still on Prime?
Yes, that's where I watched it.
Yeah, I think that movie is so fun and clever, and Daniel Craig is just absolutely delightful.
Yeah, he's a lot of fun.
Joe Bang. And I love, one of my favorite things is, I don't know if you noticed, in the credits, it says, and introducing Daniel Craig as Joe Bang.
Yeah.
Hilarious to me.
I love it when they do stuff like that too.
I'm glad you came around on that because I'm a fan.
I also didn't catch it first. Is it Jack Quaid? Was he the one? He's one of the brothers?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I didn't catch that the first time I saw it.
Yeah, he's on The Boys and obviously the son of Dennis Quaid and Meg Ryan. Oh, look at the kitty cat.
This is Inara. She's going to be a big star. She's just complaining because it's about time for her to be fed, but clearly I'm not going to do it. Chloe's going to take care of it. I'm surprised you're not screaming at me.
She's sweet. Look at her. I like her stripes on her legs.
Oh yeah, she's adorable.
PJ, what about yourself?
I think I've made it no real secret. I've binge watched Cobra Kai twice already through. I really, really love season 3. I think that it's kind of everything I was hoping the show could basically become. And I'll say this, I think that the finale is one of the great moments that the franchise has ever seen. The last 10 minutes in particular is just I was sitting on the edge of my seat, and as everything was happening, I was like, oh shit, that they're going to do the thing. They're really going to do the thing. And they did the thing, and it made me happy. So Cobra Kai was really awesome. And then I also watched all of the Spider-Man movies for the first time in a while. I hadn't seen the Raimi or the Amazing films in quite a while, and it was kind of a nice nostalgic trip down memory lane while also being man, The Amazing Spider-Man 2, still not good. It tries, and there's some moments in it that are really good, but not a good movie. But it did make me super excited for the new Spider-Man film, because to kind of revisit a lot of those movies and see all those actors in the roles and knowing that so many of them are coming back, it was man, I can't wait for whatever. I think currently it's going under the title Homeworld, or something similar to that. So we'll see how it all shakes out. But I really loved revisiting all the Spider-Man films. It changed my rankings pretty considerably, to be honest.
What are they? Someone's asking.
Someone did ask. Okay, Matt, it was Spider-Man Homecoming. It just barely beats out Spider-Man 2 because there's just little moments in it that I love. It really comes down to the montage towards the beginning of him being the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, and he's doing all these mundane tasks where he doesn't want to do it.
Sorry to interrupt you, but you're not including Into the Spider-Verse. You're just doing live action?
It's just live action.
Okay.
Yeah, just live action. Because Spider-Verse is clearly the number one, to get that out of the way. But this is only in live action. So it's Homecoming, Spider-Man 2, the original Spider-Man, Spider-Man Far From Home, then The Amazing Spider-Man, Spider-Man 3, and Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very, very cool.
I also did watch Cobra Kai, so that is something I did watch. I can say that.
Very nice. So I watched first I watched the original Karate Kid and Karate Kid 2. I had never seen Karate Kid 2 before. I heard mixed things about it. I liked it. I mean, the original is great and cheesy and beautifully 80s and a blast. But I thought the second was pretty good. I like how it focuses more on Mr. Miyagi. You get to find out more about his past. And Pat Morita is really the glue that holds both of those films together. I would say. But the reason I decided to watch him is because I wanted to start watching Cobra Kai. So I watched the first season, not the second or third yet. And if you saw, I was not a big fan of the first 4 episodes or so. I thought the writing wasn't great. I thought the acting was a little weak. And I found pretty much every character to be very unlikable. Which for some of the characters was the point, and then for others, I think they were just missing the mark. But somewhere around the 5th and 6th episode, I thought everything started to come into focus. it became clear what the plan for the season was. Characters started to learn and grow, and it really started feeling like a TV show as opposed to a proof of concept. And, I'm not going to sit here and say that the first season of Cobra Kai was great television or one of my favorite things, but all in all, I did enjoy it. It's cheesy fun. It's heavy on the nostalgia, and I think it nailed those nostalgic points, especially having just rewatched the first movie and the second movie. It does a really nice job of bringing elements in from those and locations and characters. For what it's worth, I do think it's just patently and inherently ridiculous that two middle-aged men are still holding on to what was ultimately, in the grand scheme of their life, like a really minor high school rivalry. But there was one conversation that Johnny has with Miguel where he talks about the impact what Daniel did to him had on him and how his perspective on it is so different than Daniel's. And obviously in the original film, we see everything through Daniel's point of view. He's the main character. He's the underdog. He's the one we're supposed to like, and Johnny's the bad guy. But that, to me, was the best moment in the season. And for me, that is what sold me on the existence of the show, because it was so fascinating to see how you have to remember that, he was a kid too, and he didn't see his family life so much. So now that we understand the troubles he was having at home, the expectations that were put on him, and then to see how the things Daniel did and Mr. Miyagi did to him impacted him was really fascinating.
It's one of the things that I really love about the show, because like when you and I had been kind of talking about it, and I was like, you're gonna have to get through like the early parts of that season because it is rough. Like you got to kind of keep pushing through. But the thing that I've liked about the show is that it really has given a lot of love to who both these characters were at a very specific time, and the show goes a long way to also be like, there are characters who think that Daniel was the villain in all of it, and so there's a very interesting perspective on both sides of like, maybe it wasn't as black and white as you thought. And I thought that this season in particular, I don't want to give any spoilers, obviously, because you haven't seen it, but I thought this season in particular finally went out of its way to be like, someone steps in and goes, guys, you're on the same page. And like, it's really time for, there's your side, side, and there's the truth. And that's what you need to find.
My favorite character pretty much became Daniel's wife, because she was always the voice of reason. She was always the one who was like, you guys are holding on to this bullshit from 30 years ago. You're grown men.
Yeah.
But the only other thing I want to say is the first couple episodes, I didn't quite get what William Zabka was doing. I thought he felt lost. And then somewhere about halfway through, it became a really nuanced, beautiful performance. And I think he's actually really fantastic. I actually think his performance is quite a bit better than Ralph Macchio's, at least in what I've seen so far.
Macchio gets incredible by the time.
I was going to say, I agree with what you were saying, Max, about, because I think there's a reason that they chose and I would say two things real quick. I think it started as a joke that the whole, like literally Cobra Kai, as looking at it from Johnny's point of view, starts as a joke and How I Met Your Mother, and then it really stands out how they decided to go with it here. But I
have to watch this without thinking of How I Met Your Mother.
That's literally how the show came to existence.
Yeah,
that's the crazy thing.
Max, I think you actually have a really good point as far as William Zabka, and I think that you don't see what he's doing initially, but then it's kind of like, oh, they're doing a really good job of like showing you who he is, and he's doing, like you said, a really nuanced performance. And I think there's a reason that the show lends itself to him anchoring it over Daniel LaRusso, because he's clearly doing a lot of really good work there.
Macchio gets the first credit, but at least in the first season, it very much felt to me like Johnny was the main character, and Daniel just is like a supporting character.
And I'll say this, like, by the time I got done with season 3, I didn't tweet it. I really thought about it, but I really want to see someone, when the show is over, give Zabka like a Taken-esque action franchise. I think the dude would be excellent in something like that. I think he's incredibly talented, and there's a part in season 3 that you could feel like that very visceral emotion coming through, and I was like, I want more of that, like, out of him, and I want to see him in a franchise that'll let him do that, like, on a bigger scale.
Sure. I mean, I'm at the point where I'm looking forward to now watching seasons 2 and 3, which yesterday when I was only halfway through, I was like, oh, I don't know if I can make it through this. But
I think I don't know if you were playing on it, but I think Pat would agree with me. You should probably watch Karate Kid Part 3 as well.
I haven't seen it. I haven't seen any of the Karate Kids all the way through before I started watching Cobra Kai. I don't think it's necessary.
Well, I mean, it is for season 3. I'm not going to get into it, but there's.
I felt like season 1 and 2 were at least enough, and I mean, there's definitely something that's building, but I think like at the same time, you don't necessarily need it just yet. And I think that he could finish season 2 and 3 and then finish it. That would be my opinion. But it's dealer's choice. If Maxwell decides before he starts season 2 he wants to watch season 3, then I mean, I'm not going to say don't watch it. Like, it's still good, but you know, it's dealer's choice.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm probably not going to.
At least not right now. 4. By season 4, you will.
That's right. All right. Well, look, we are here to celebrate.
Real quick, Jeremy, I agree. I do not agree with this, especially in this last season. Yeah,
1 and 2 are for sure. I mean, honestly, none of them are necessary. But if you want to get more out of the show,
yeah.
I mean, I'm going to say a hot take here. I think really the only one that you have to watch to truly grasp what Cobra Kai is doing is the next Karate Kid. Because I have it on good authority that in season 4, Hilary Swank is coming back.
I'll say this. The creators have not said that. They've said that her character is still out there, and there has been enough little like the stuff.
Yeah, it wouldn't shock me.
Yeah, it wouldn't shock me. I think that they've done a brilliant job at doing. This is becoming like a semi Cobra Kai like review of all the seasons, but like they've done a brilliant job bridging off of each movie in very specific ways. And if they ever decided or could get Hilary Swank back, even for an episode, I think that would be really awesome. And honestly, like coming off of the end of season 3, that would be a perfect time for them to decide to try to bring her back.
PJ and I talked about this yesterday, actually, that I mean, theoretically, there's no reason why Jackie Chan and or Jaden Smith couldn't also come and be in an episode.
I mean, they'd have to definitely figure something out just on the chance, or just on the fact that they were not in America, and obviously so much of it still takes place in Los Angeles, like in the Valley. Right. But there's no saying that it can't happen, because
I mean, it's 2020, airplanes exist,
and Will still produces the show because Will owned the IP. I mean, they were part of the producers, obviously, on the remake, and so. Never say never.
The only other thing I'll say is I really appreciate the episode lengths.
Me too.
I'm not one of those people who's like all TV shows should be short, but I do think that with streaming especially, there's been a tendency to unnecessarily pad certain shows. Just because you're on a streaming service doesn't mean your episode has to be an hour long or like 58 minutes or longer. And the fact that these all range from like 25 to 31 minutes or so, it doesn't waste any time, and I really appreciate that.
I agree.
I've really grown to care about the kids almost more so than Daniel and Johnny.
I'm sure that was intentional. Like,
Oh yeah. I will say, I think that I think as it goes on, it does a really nice balance of literally all of them by the time you get to like the 3rd season, and then you're like, holy shit, like I'm in it for literally all of these people.
Yeah. Into the Karate-verse. I mean, anything's possible. All right, so here's what we'll do. Let's start with television. And why don't we we'll go around and each person can name 2 or 3, say what numbers they are, say what the show is, where it aired, why you loved it so much, and then we'll build up and keep going around until we end up with all of our favorites.
Cool.
Why don't we start with Tim and work our way clockwise around?
Okay, so I didn't have 10 shows that I could come up with that I saw this year, 10 from 2020. However, just sitting here, I did think of another one, so I do have 7 now. So I'll go ahead and start from the bottom of my list. So at number 7, I have it's a docuseries, a miniseries, but it's on HBO, and it just came out this in December, so it's very late, to 2020. But it's Heaven's Gate: The Cult of Cults, which is the miniseries on the Heaven's Gate cult, the UFO cult that popped up in the 70s and 80s and then disappeared for a while, and then appeared again in the 90s, and then they had the mass suicide in San Diego where 39 people all committed suicide thinking that they were going to go take a ride on a UFO that was on the tip of a comet. But really fascinating documentary, kind of like goes into the earlier history of the cult, which I actually wasn't super aware of. And then just real crazy seeing like people who left the group right before it all happened, but they they were still believers, and like they're kind of like now like still believe that what they did achieved their goal. And yeah, it's just kind of fascinating to see like the people that believe this. And I mean, maybe it was true. Who am I to say? But yeah, it's just, I think it's a really cool documentary, and HBO has been doing really well on documentaries lately, specifically on these types of things, because they also had The Vow, which was really good as well. So that's my number 7 there. At number 6, maybe this is a hot take, but I put The Mandalorian at number 6. Really, really loved it, but I just happen to love stuff on my at the top of my list more. But I think it was a fantastic season. I liked it more than the first. I loved all the like beats that they played to build, to tie in the mythology and build the mythology. It was fantastic. But,
Steven.
Awesome.
Also, I think I didn't know about this. I didn't know that one of the persons that was in the cult and committed suicide was Nichelle Nichols' brother. And Nichelle Nichols played Uhura on Star Trek, for those who didn't know. But and she was in some of the interviews, and she's like, okay with what happened. I mean, for sure she's sad she doesn't have her brother anymore, but it seems like she was also very kind of like accepting of like, this was his decision. This was something he believed in passionately, and my brother was a very smart man, intelligent man, and so it's interesting. But that's 2. I'll go ahead and give another one since we said 2 or 3. At number 5. Am I on 5? Yeah. I have Ozark. The 3rd season of Ozark,
nice.
which was on Netflix. I started watching that show, I think, at the beginning of 2020. I think binged it all, and then watched all the 3rd season. And yeah, that show is really, really good if you haven't seen it. Jason Bateman's incredible in it, and so is Laura Linney. Laura Linney is fantastic in it, especially in the 3rd season. And I'm excited to see where they go with it. I think it's going to be the last season. This next season, I think, is the last. So, yeah, those are 3 right there. So
Awesome.
Just to get us rolling. I don't know if anyone saw any of those. Well, actually, I do know everyone saw The Mandalorian, but
it may exist on other people's lists. In other placements.
The first 2 seasons of Ozark, I have not seen the 3rd yet. There's just,
There's so much television these days.
Yeah.
For me, I think I've said this before on the Mandalorian shows. When a show drops an entire season at once, I almost feel less impetus to necessarily go and watch it in any sort of time.
Right.
I'll just add it to my list, and when I'm like, oh, now is the time I'm going to watch this season of this show and do it. There's a few exceptions to that, ones where I don't want to get spoiled or left out of the conversation. But generally, when something airs week by week, I find it easier to want to keep up in the time that they're being released. So,
I agree. I think we'll see, like with Mandalorian and other shows that are dropping like
Boys.
that. Yeah, The Boys. Oh, another one to add to my list. I'm cobbling together a list as we're going, and I was late. Like,
do you want us to skip you and come back to you, Dan?
Yeah, skip me and come back. I'll have something here in a few, because I don't know if I'll be able to figure out if things that I've seen this year also dropped in this year, because there are a couple of things that I was catching up on.
We don't have any rules.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
I mean, when
There's
Sully
no
was
rules.
going to be on, we were just like, just name 10 things you watched in like this year, because we know you don't watch things.
Yeah, the favorite things you watched this year, we was talking about. So.
Yeah. So yeah, skip me.
Right.
I'll have more stuff and more things to add later.
All right, PJ, what you got? What are your first
right.
couples?
So the first couple I've got, the first one was a 6-episode miniseries that was on HBO, created by David Simon, who obviously has worked with HBO in the past, and that was The Plot Against America, which was like an alt-reality TV series about America during World War II. I thought this was like an incredibly acted and incredibly written show. It was based on a book, and just really, really emotionally draining, but I found myself fascinated by it. Being a miniseries, I think kind of was the best case scenario for this, because Man from High Castle is great, but 4 seasons of what would have happened if the Nazis had won is a lot. And so to like cut down anything down to like 6 episodes and being like, this is like what alternate America would look like, is very fascinating to me. There's a lot of great stuff in that show. So if you've never seen it, check it out. Like I said, it's only 6 episodes, so it's a very easy watch.
I have read and loved the book. I have not watched the show yet, but I want to. But Conversely, I do highly recommend the book. It's quite good.
Yeah. I read the book a long time ago when it came out, and I don't think I read it since, 2004 when it came out? Something like that.
Oh, look, I don't know off the top of my head.
Yeah, early 2000s. I remember that. My second, another one, it's a mini series, almost like not even really a series, but it was pretty much 2 movies.
You nailed it.
Was The Comey Rule with Jeff Daniels. And obviously, if you know anything about it, it has to do with James Comey and what happened right before the election. I really didn't need a story about this necessarily, but I also love Jeff Daniels, and that was the reason I was watching it. Like, I think Jeff Daniels is one of the most underappreciated actors in the space. I think that he does incredible dramatic work, so any reason to watch him is really incredible. But obviously, like I said, there is a lot about it that as you're watching it, you're like, did I really necessarily need this? No, probably not. Brendan Gleeson is fucking terrifying as Donald Trump, and it just makes you even hate him more. It just gets under your skin. Yes, Reefism. I didn't have anything better to name myself, and I was thinking about the book and decided, what the hell, I'm going to put that as my name. Now I really want to read Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter. So there's that. And then my number 3 was actually The Boys. I hadn't seen it until season 2 dropped, and I binged all the way through it so that I could watch the show with everyone else, and I was pretty blown away because the truth of the matter is that the Boys comic has never been one that stood out to me. I've always thought the writing was relatively weak, which is interesting because I always thought Gareth Ennis was a really good writer when it came to The Punisher, but the Boys never really did a lot for me. So to go into this show created by Seth Rogen, I was very curious. Carl Urban is the lead, Jack Quaid is the lead. Like, all right, you got my attention. The show pretty much rocks. I think it's a pretty good deconstruction on the superhero genre, and I have a lot of fun with it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
You definitely jump in on The Boys, too, because it was one of those things that, like, I started watching it, like, when everyone came out, and it was, I think they would release, 3 at a time? They didn't release them, like, one by one by one. But
I think they released the first 3 and then one by one.
Yeah, I think it was 3 and then one by one after that, yeah.
Because it was funny that, like, I was expecting, watching The Boys, I was like, the first season I really liked, and then I was like, how are they going to get crazier than that first season? And then I took a big break in the middle of it, but then I saw the second season, and by the end of that second season run, I'm like, why am I crying so much at the end of this show? This is, like, heartbreaking, and they did a really good job of, like, making you really invested in these characters, especially ones that you think are, like, super uber violent criminals, but then it's kind of like, oh, they're doing a great job of humanizing them as well. Yes.
Also, yes, Gettysburg and Gods and Generals. Like, we don't talk enough about how great he is in those movies, but that's just me.
But yeah, no, The Boys was absolutely fantastic. I'm happy that it's really interesting. I was a little sad that they, like, dropped the plot line of the Deep having his gills talking to him, which that was probably one of my only disappointing things because it was, like, really amusing. But then it was, like, a 2-episode thing, and I was like, wait, what happened to that plot line? But
don't worry, they did other things with his gills.
But no, yeah, I'm with you where The Boys was definitely a highlight as far as TV release this year.
All right, I'll go now. So I actually have a top 10, but it's actually a top 11. I have 3 shows tied for 9th and 10th place, and I feel comfortable grouping them together because they're all very much coming-of-age shows. The first is Love, Victor, which aired on Hulu. This is sort of a spin-off of the film Love, Simon. It takes place at the same school he went to with new characters. The main character, named appropriately enough Victor, who is also gay and coming to terms with how to come out and his family accepting it. And conversely to Simon, Victor's family is a lot more conservative and strict. I found it funny and charming. I like how they integrated Simon and some characters from the movie into it in a way that felt organic, while also allowing the new characters to really grow and build. The second one is Dash and Lily, which aired on Netflix. This is also based on a young adult novel. It's a holiday show. It takes place in New York at Christmas time. It's about 2 characters, one named Lily, who leaves basically a note in a book at the Strand, and in hopes that someone finds it and will go on this sort of citywide treasure scavenger hunt she let out, and they begin exchanging letters, not dissimilar to Shop Around the Corner, You've Got Mail. It switches back and forth between their two perspectives. I just found it very charming and romantic. It really, really did a great job of capturing New York City at the holidays. And it was just light and fun with some solid acting. And then the third one is Never Have I Ever. This is also a Netflix show created by Mindy Kaling. It's a high school coming-of-age show about a young Indian girl whose father recently passed away, who makes it her mission to get a boyfriend and have sex. And I found it very idiosyncratic and witty. And perhaps the most absurd yet delightful thing is that the entire show is narrated by John McEnroe as himself. So things will be happening, like these teenage girls will be making out with guys, or there'll be really awkward things, and John will say, "Yes, I am having a hard time watching this too." Yes, all three of those are tied. And then in my 8th spot, I don't know if anyone expected this to be higher on my list, is The Mandalorian. You know what I thought about The Mandalorian. Thoroughly enjoyed it more than the first season. Really solid show. Love how it plays in the Star Wars mythos, but I've talked amply about The Mandalorian. So back to you, Tim.
Well, I can here. I'll just start with you.
Dan?
Yeah. So as far as like things that were dropped and or that were new seasons that I came to there, and I'll just pepper in some other ones too, because like of what as Max knows, and we've talked about it a couple times, I'm currently going through One Tree Hill with the wife because I've never seen that, and that's interesting in and of itself. I don't hate it. It's like all of my musical tastes from that era, so it's really easy for me to get tied in really quickly. There's a question about the T-shirt, PJ. Go ahead.
This is my Coheed and Cambria Jesse's Girl 2 t-shirt. It's very horror related. They wrote a horror sequel song to what happens after Jesse's Girl. Rick Springfield even came back to do part of the song. It's fucking awesome. I didn't do a top songs of the year, but that was easily one of my favorite songs because no one was asking for a sequel to Jesse's Girl, and that song fucking slaps.
I'm so confused. You're a Coheed fan?
Fuck those guys.
So first day here, Dan?
Yeah, right. It's my first time streaming in a long time. One of the things I did just discover, because I'm doing just a tiny bit of homework and cobbling together lists, I did watch early in this year the series called I Am Not Okay With This, which was from the producers of Stranger Things, and it was starring the young lady who was in both It movies. And it's a coming-of-age tale about a girl who slowly learns that she has telekinetic powers. Really enjoyed that show. I really liked what they did. And then where they wind up ending that particular season, I don't think it got renewed, and I'm sad because it's... Go ahead.
Partly why I ended up not including it on mine is because I'm pissed they canceled it because I felt like there was so much more to explore.
Yeah, agreed. And like I'm annoyed too because it was like there was a lot of potential in that first season. And there are two other places I want to go real quick while we're talking about Netflix. And first off, for coming of age, maybe 3 places. First off, I'm pissed off that they canceled Santa Clarita Diet. Like that was one of my favorite shows that they had going. I'm sure it didn't seem like it would have been high budget, but I'm just really annoyed that they didn't get that final season to really wrap everything up. And the other coming of age one, I don't know, I think they released a season this year, was Sex Education, which was Netflix is really strangely becoming super progressive about how they're giving their content. And Sex Education is based in the UK, and Gillian Anderson is one of the main characters, and so is Asa Butterfield. And it's really, really, really worth a watch. And they're exploring every avenue and every aspect. And then the other one I just watched a week or two ago was Big Mouth. And Big Mouth has been a favorite of mine on Netflix for a really long time. And like there was nothing anywhere near like this content when we were growing up about like, hey, you could literally be on anywhere on the spectrum, any X, Y, Z axis, wherever you are, and there's going to be a piece of content that someone's going to be out there appealing to you, and Netflix is putting a lot of it out.
And you are right. Season 2 of Sex Education dropped in January of this year, so it feels like forever ago, but it was 2020.
Yeah.
It was a long year.
It's been a long fucking year.
Yeah, you guys remember we all went to movies in the calendar year of 2020.
It's true.
Like we went to the theater. I know some of you guys have been to the theater since, but like.
All right, Tim. What are your
I'll go over my next two since my list is short. I could have added on when they were talking about, but at number 4 for me is The Boys season 2. I loved it. I thought it ramped up like the mythology and like the action and the craziness, and also bringing on Aya Cash as Stormfront was incredible. She was an incredible character, and like, yeah, if you think Homelander's who he is, I mean, Stormfront ain't nothing to mess with. So I love that character. As despicable as she was, you're supposed to hate her, but she was great addition. And then let's see here. My number 3 is actually something that I binged from the beginning during quarantine. I started from the first season and made it all the way through the current season that aired this year, which is Better Call Saul.
Nice. Good
Better Call Saul is incredible. I also rewatched Breaking Bad this year during quarantine because it's been a few years, while I was also watching Better Call Saul. And man, that shows, I mean, Breaking Bad is its own thing. It's amazing, but I also really like Better Call Saul. I think it's incredible. It kind of like you get the like the drama and like the criminess of like Breaking Bad, but then you also get some like, you know, lightheartedness and some comedy with Saul as a character and kind of the stuff that he goes through. And I think his journey is pretty interesting as well, that he's been going through in becoming who you know him to be in Breaking Bad. And I think this season was just another great addition to that. And also, I can't remember her name right now, but the actor that plays his love interest, like his girlfriend throughout the show, she's incredible. Yeah, I knew it was Seahorn. I couldn't remember her first name. She's fantastic in the show.
Kim Wexler.
Kim Wexler, yeah, she is great. So, obviously, you know, something might, you know, go down, and you know, we don't know what happens there. But
Dwayne mentioned one I missed.
What?
Dwayne mentioned one in his little comment on the side that I missed.
So yeah, those are the next two on my list. But yeah, if you haven't seen Better Call Saul, check it out. It's really good. So
yeah,
I think the first four
I may or may not be mentioning that one in a bit.
Yeah.
Do you got more, Dan?
I had a couple. I don't know if I have any. Like, I feel like we would be remiss, and I'll just throw it out there because I don't know. It was before I really officially joined the channel, but I did, much like everybody in the beginning of quarantine, watch Tiger King. I don't know if I would put it on the list as far as one of the best ones, but it was one of those things where it was like, there's not a way, like, it's, and the producer who they interviewed in the show was right. Like, there's not a way that this is a real thing that's actually happening. And then as you watch further on, it's like, no, like I'm not normally a big fan of reality TV because a lot of it feels forced and a lot of it feels scripted, but this one was like so off the wall that like watching all of it in the beginning of quarantine was a really nice way to spend a couple of days in quarantine.
Yeah, I never watched it. Chris asked, is there anything TV-wise we didn't enjoy? Yeah, but generally I have a pretty short leash. If I'm trying a show out and I don't like it, I'll just stop watching it.
I did see a movie that I started to watch that I didn't enjoy this year that I never finished.
Mm-hmm.
All right, PJ, what are your next couple?
Okay, so going off where we left off, there's no real order to any of this, to be honest, because I pretty much enjoyed all of this as much as the rest. Like, there's no real order to it, but Lovecraft Country, which was based on a book. It was another HBO series. I thought this one was like a real trip. They did a really great job taking the book and doing something better with it, in my opinion. I really liked the book. I thought the show was better. The final season of the Clone Wars, we forget that was earlier this year. Finally seeing the show come to an end was really great. I thought that the last 4 episodes in particular were some of the best that Star Wars and particularly that show has ever been. And I thought that it kind of brought a very cool close to the prequel era, if you will, because I'm sure there's still going to be stuff that we explore there, but it was kind of the final canon stories, if you will, of that particular time, especially in Revenge of the Sith. So loved that a lot. And DuckTales, which I'm furious that Disney has canceled. So good, man. So good.
Larry, I'm on DuckTales.
What are we talking about last year?
Brandy's saying you said it was this year, but technically it's 2021, so everything we're talking about was last year.
It's whatever. It's 2020. Brandy. The thing says 2020, so you know
Brandy
what I meant.
Being the grammar police in the chat.
Okay, so in number 7, I have The Haunting of Bly Manor. This is the follow-up to Hill House. Not as in your face, overtly scary. It dealt with a very different type of horror. I found it beautiful and romantic. I thought the performances were exceptional across the board. And it lingered on in my mind in a way that perhaps Hill House didn't. Hill House was more like immediately viscerally terrorful. That's not a word. Terrifying. Whereas Bly Manor sort of got under your skin and was more like a gothic horror romance, kind of like Crimson Peak, that sort of thing.
I was literally just going to say that.
I loved it very much. In number 6, I have The Flight Attendant. This aired on HBO Max. It stars Kaylee Cuoco, who sort of blew me away. I'd seen plenty of Big Bang Theory. I thought she was relatively funny. I didn't know she had something like this in her. I thought she was sort of a revelation, playing this sort of like alcoholic, like desperate woman who gets involved in something that makes her go on this very wild journey. It was very, very darkly funny. Very much a mystery and a neo-noir. I thought it balanced its tones really well, and it nailed the ending. I find a lot of mystery series hinges on if they nail the ending, and I thought this did nail it, and I highly recommend it. And then in number 5 is a show that I loved. I didn't know I was going to love it, and I am still furious that Hulu canceled it, and that's High Fidelity. With Zoe Kravitz in the lead role. I thought this was such a smart, both gender twist and slight cultural twist, because a lot of the main characters are in the show are black, and the novel and the film are very white and very male. And I thought they did such a smart job of building these characters that are rich and beautiful. It's set in New York, and it's a great New York show. I fell in love with these characters, and the fact that we won't see more of them makes me really quite sad. But
before we get,
it's worth watching.
I was just going to say, before we get too far away, I definitely want to jump in with The Haunting of Bly Manor, because when that came out.
We're going to talk about it again later, Dan, if you want to wait.
Oh, I don't care. I can do whatever.
It's up to you, though. I'm definitely going to talk about it, but
okay.
Go ahead.
Since I don't have a ranking.
You won't get away from it.
Yeah, I'm just jumping in wherever. It was one of those things where I was like Max. I was a little bit surprised where the first one was so focused on horror, and you made the comparison that I was thinking in my head. It felt like I felt very let down when I saw Crimson Peak, and Bly Manor felt much more like I tend to like these series more because they take their time. You get to know the characters a lot better. The acting, especially by the kids too, like it's phenomenal. And I like that he's bringing back the same actors to go into different roles. Henry Thomas is so broken, and like you don't recognize him, period. That's the kid from E.T. who was acting his ass off, and now he's British in this new series of Bly Manor. And like Flanagan is out of this world.
I wanted to mention this. Chris says Winona Earp's first few episodes of the newest season was fun. I agree. I love Winona Earp. Because of COVID, they only got to air a couple episodes this year, and then production shut down. So I sort of didn't consider it for list purposes, but that show is a blast. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it.
I love Winona Earp. It's so good. That is all.
PJ?
Me again?
Oh, no, I guess it's... No, I guess it's
background to me.
I just... Because Dan was the most recent who spoke, so
I jump around.
I only have 2 left, so I'm just going to mention one so I can at least go around one more time. So
sure.
My number 2 is What We Do in the Shadows, the second season of the vampire comedy series based on the Taika Waititi film. I mean, I love the first season. I love the second season even more. The show's absolutely freaking hysterical. I love all the actors. Matthew Berry is one of my favorite people. I love him on IT Crowd, and I love him in What We Do in the Shadows. Jackie Daytona.
Yeah.
That's how we talk in Tucson, Arizona. So, yeah, what can I say? I mean, the show's hilarious. I love every character. I love, can't think of his name right now, but the actor that plays Guillermo.
Oh, he's so funny.
Is great. So, yeah, I mean, if you haven't seen What We Do in the Shadows, check it out. It is really funny. I think you might like it more than the movie, once it's all said and done. And I love that movie.
It's on my list. I just haven't gotten into it yet.
Yeah. Yep.
I know I'll love it because I love the movie.
Yep. You will. It's great.
And you said you had one more, Tim?
Yeah, I have one more, but I'm gonna let
I think
go around
based
the
on
table.
context clues, I know what it is.
Right?
Yep, I let it slip.
Deductive reasoning.
I let it slip. No, that's in my honorable mentions. No, I'm just kidding.
I have one.
And?
The only other I did think of one more, and the only reason I didn't think of it is because it just dropped and I haven't finished it. But I'm a huge fan of Letterkenny, and Letterkenny dropped, I think, seasons. I can't remember whether it's 7, 8, or 9. But their seasons are so concise that they only ever air like 8 to 10 episodes, and they're like 20 minutes long each. And you can fly through them all on Hulu, and they are a lot of fun to watch. Like once you get the rhythm down,
It was season 9 that just dropped on
season
Christmas. 7 episodes.
Yeah, Letterkenny is great. I still am not caught up at all. I've been making my way through it, but it's hilarious.
It's so funny. It makes me very, very happy. So I'm happy it came back.
Funny thing about Letterkenny is Eric from Are You Afraid of the Dark, one of the main cast members.
This is actually Winona Earp's gun right here. This is Peacemaker. So yes, I do enjoy it.
Nice.
Eric from Are You Afraid of the Dark is one of the creators, and he's on Letterkenny. I can't remember what character he is.
He's probably the preacher then.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, I believe
Jacob Tierney.
Yep. But he was one of the original cast members of Are You Afraid of the Dark? Which is
I did not know that. No, and it's filmed like I know the area of Canada that they film it in, and it's like a tiny Canadian town. Like it's a very authentically shot show, and you can tell like there's a lot of care in their comedy and everything, and like it's in them like so quotable.
Oh yeah.
I've seen the first couple seasons of Letterkenny. I have not seen it all, but I want to. And also the actress who plays Winona Earp is on Letterkenny as well.
Yep.
And she's a Ready or Not. She's super versatile and funny. Like she's such a badass and stoic on Winona Earp. And then Letterkenny and Ready or Not. She's exactly. All right, PJ, you're up.
All right. So I've got a couple more, obviously. I don't even know what number at this point. It was already kind of brought up. The Mandalorian. The Mandalorian was great. I had a great time going back to that world. I love Star Wars. Like no shock there. I thought that season 2 was the best version of itself so far. Getting past season 1, which kind of like what we were talking about with Cobra Kai. Season 1's good. Don't get me wrong, but it feels like a proof of concept. You're still figuring out what Star Wars can be on the small screen. Season 2 was not. I felt like they had gotten most of their kinks out of the way, so it worked out really well. I have not yet. I really need to.
So I've seen every episode and love it, and forgot there was a season this year. So might have been on my list had I remembered, but
yeah.
I'm a big fan of Bosch.
After that, I have to give a shout out to The Good Place, which finally ended this year. Season 4 was a fucking masterstroke of storytelling. It absolutely wrecked me. I was not prepared for how it was going to end. I was not prepared for the emotions it was going to make me feel. I really adore that show anyway. I think it was one of the best written comedies on television, and by the time it got to the end, I was just like an emotional mess. And I was so glad that Shout Factory put the entire series out on Blu-ray. It's so fucking good, you guys.
I think Mike Schur is pretty good at what he does.
Yeah, I agree. 100%. Hot take. Mike Schur is pretty, damn good. I'm a big fan.
Emmy award-winning show creator.
Essentially, any show he's been involved in over the last 2 decades has been great.
Honestly, and while we're talking about Mike Schur, there might have been a new season of Brooklyn Nine-Nine that came out this year.
Yeah, there was.
I think there was.
Yeah, there was, and I think I should have probably had it also on my list because I also love Brooklyn Nine-Nine, but like I immediately went to The Good Place just because. Again, it was just an emotional masterstroke, I felt like, of storytelling.
I feel like normally like when we're doing Ramble On, I'm categorizing all this, so I have like a really nice like thing to go back through. But since it's like we've been home so much more and I'm consuming so much more media, it's like I'm having a harder time pinning it down.
Yeah. Jeremy, I'm super excited.
I have my DVR set for Mr. Mayor, yeah.
Well, and the interesting thing, Maxwell and I have talked about this a lot, and people don't know or don't realize it was originally a 30 Rock spinoff. It was written for Alec Baldwin's character, and it was going to be about him becoming mayor of New York. But then Baldwin wanted to do other things, so they changed it to get Ted Danson and moved it to
I am not mad that Ted Danson immediately got another show after The Good Place.
Me either.
Yeah, the thing with Brooklyn Nine-Nine is for the most part, unless I don't know. I thought it was a solid season, not one of its best, and it was only 13 episodes, so I liked it very much. But I also probably watch more TV than anyone on this show right now, so I could have made a top 25 of TV shows. I watch a lot of TV. I mean, I do have a master's in television management, so TV is my life.
And I think that leaves me one more to bring up before I get.
Wait, is this your last one, or
no,
you have?
No, I have what. There's one more after this one. So
okay, great. Okay, so yeah, save your number one for the final. Yeah, okay.
But this should become, as no shock, Maxwell and I have talked a lot about this show throughout the year. Ted Lasso is fucking amazing. I am such a huge fan of Bill Lawrence. Number one, Scrubs is one of my all-time favorite shows, and I love anything that just feels good. And in 2020, Ted Lasso was like the thing that I needed. I think this show is brilliantly written. I think that the casting is impeccable. I could not get enough of it, and it just brought me so much joy and so much happiness, episode in and episode out, that I think this, in my opinion, is Apple TV's best show by like a pretty considerable margin. And Jason Sudeikis is a fucking treasure, and I love him so much.
Does Dan or Tim have anything to say about Ted Lasso?
I think it's.
I haven't seen it. So.
I haven't seen it either, but I think given everything I know about the show,
Robert, yes.
I'm with you too, Robert. I'm a huge Scrubs fan. And you're also talking about Jason Sudeikis coaching an EPL team, so it's like everything that's in my wheelhouse, and it's just going to be a matter of when, not if, I watch the show, because it's like I'm fighting with myself. I'm like, God, I could binge it in a week. I know I'll binge it in a week, but then it's like,
what happens when season 2 comes out?
It's like real short, dude. It's a real short.
PJ, though, your placement and timing is perfect, because that brings me to my number 4, which is Ted Lasso.
Yes, I love it.
Absolutely adored the show. It is just an empathy bomb. It is hilarious. I think it's Jason Sudeikis' best work
easily
by a considerable margin. I think he should win an Emmy Award for this show. It has some profane, gross out humor. Juno Temple is great, but what really made me fall in love with it is how fucking sweet it is, how empathetic it is, how big its heart is exactly, which is really what Bill Lawrence does in all of his shows. Yeah. Scrubs, Cougar Town, which I'm a big fan of. Terrible title, great show that just got better and better as it went on. But yeah, Ted Lasso is terrific. I love all of the ensemble members who play the different players on the football team. And by football, I mean soccer, but I really mean football. There's only one football I acknowledge, and it's the one you actually play with your fucking feet. Yeah, Ted Lasso is awesome. Highly recommended. In number 3, I have Better Call Saul. If you had told me couple years ago when they made a spinoff of Breaking Bad that not only would it be as good, but in some cases even better, I would argue, I wouldn't have believed you. But this show is so beautifully performed. As it has gone on, it has done, like Tim said, such a great job of balancing the crime and drug dealing elements with the more comedy and drama and lawyer stuff. But really, to me, the MVP of the show is Kim Wexler and Rhea Seehorn. I think the fact that she has not gotten an Emmy nomination yet is a crime. She is absolutely incredible. And frankly, as we get closer and closer to the end, I am terrified about what's going to happen to her, because obviously Kim is not in Breaking Bad. I'm just hoping she goes to witness protection or something.
Or just leaves.
Or leaves, and then maybe they could do a show, get Kim on the phone. Yeah, Better Call Saul is fantastic. If you haven't seen it and you have seen Breaking Bad, it gets really my highest recommendation. And then in my second spot is the final season of Schitt's Creek. I would argue as good of a final season as any modern comedy has had. I always appreciate a show that goes out on its own terms. And this is a great example of that. Dan Levy and his father, Eugene, were like, this is going to be our final season. They got to write towards the ending from the beginning. And the great thing about Schitt's Creek at large is, much like Ted Lasso, how big its heart is, how empathetic it is, how the town of Schitt's Creek is very much a fairy tale in that there's not really hate or homophobia or racism, but that's what's so great about the show, how accepting and loving and inclusive and open everyone is. And as the show went on, that became more and more true of the show. Like, these characters grew so much, and I thought the final season was just beautiful and hilarious. And frankly, I think they deserved each and every Emmy award they won. I maybe have never cried as much in a TV finale as I did in the finale of Schitt's Creek. It was beautiful and ends on the perfect last joke. So yeah.
I will definitely echo all your statements, because that's one of the things in the last 2 weeks. The wife and I went through all of Schitt's Creek, and it was one of those things where it started off as something we just put on like while we were having breakfast or something, and it wound up becoming one of our favorite shows. And same thing, like just emotionally devastating in a great way, because you've just grown to love all the characters so much, and you can tell they have like such care. We still go around the house going, "What about the Pepe?" We say that to each other constantly.
Not a day goes by where I don't say, "You just fold it in." You just fold it in.
Just fold it in.
And for what it's worth, on a personal level, we never talk emotions or personal stuff here on PJCN.
No.
As a queer man, as a pansexual or bisexual man, whatever you want to label it, I don't really care. I think its queer storytelling was a particular note. I love that David Rose is pansexual or bisexual. It's very subtle and elegant in the way they portray it. And there was an episode, I think in season 4, where another character has to come out, and it's one of the best, smartest coming out stories I've seen on TV. I think it just goes to show, when you have people writing stories that are true to themselves, it always goes better than when you have someone who doesn't have those experiences trying to write it. And I'm not intentionally casting shade on other shows, but the reality is Dan Levy and the team he assembled are so good at what they do, but he's speaking from a place of authenticity.
You're talking, I mean, I know it's like, it was season 1. Are we talking about the wine conversation?
No, this is something later.
Exactly. No, PJ's exactly right.
Oh, that was season 1, wasn't it?
That's why I said,
season 4. That's why I got thrown off.
No,
season 4 was when I didn't want to say which character came out in season 4, but the way, because I don't want to spoil it for anyone who hasn't watched.
I'm just trying to remember.
Yeah. No, but I knew exactly where you're going, because you and I had talked about that before. And Schitt's Creek, the only reason it's not on my list is because I haven't actually finished it yet, and I didn't want to cheat and be like, Schitt's Creek deserves to be there, because I'm still working through it. But that was one of the things that stood out when I watched it, because I hadn't seen it yet, and you were like, wait till you get to this part. And the writing of that scene and the acting in it is impeccable.
There's a scene where David Rose in the first season is explaining to Stevie his sexual preferences by comparing it to the type of wine he likes. And I've probably never seen a better description of pansexuality.
It's so concise.
It was so concise and elegant, and it resonated with me on such a deep level. So yeah, but like I said, they nailed the final season. I'm shocked it's not my number 1, but there's just something that I thought I loved just a little bit more. But honestly, Schitt's Creek would probably make it to like my top 15 TV shows of all time at this point. I just love it so much. All right, Tim, what's your number 1? We're all on that seat. Can't imagine what it might be.
Can't imagine what it might be. So The Haunting of Bly Manor is my number 1.
What?
I will say
The
Haunting of Bly Manor. We're gonna get to my films, later. But The Haunting of Bly Manor was the most incredible thing I watched all year. It hit me on such an emotional level I didn't see coming. I don't know if like it was my situation in life or what it was, but like it just like. Once you get to like the Altar of the Dead, which I think is like episode 5, and then those last 2 episodes of the season, especially the last 30 minutes of the show, good Lord, there was not a dry eye on this poor boy's face. And I don't know. I mean, there's nothing else. There's nothing to say. I mean, the show it's beautiful. It's incredible. It's tragic. It's not really scary because it's not really a horror story. So. If you haven't seen it, if you don't want to see it because you didn't like Bly or because you didn't like Hill House or you don't like scary stuff, I just want to say don't miss the opportunity to see this show. It's really good. It's a really great story, and it's not super scary at all. Don't be afraid of it. Be afraid of what it's going to do to you. I'm just kidding. But yeah, no, I don't know. I mean, the show's amazing. I loved it. It's my favorite thing I watched all year. I think about it all the time, and I literally like a couple weeks ago, I just went on a YouTube binge and I just watched people's reaction to the final episode. And I watched like 30 or so reactions of different people watching just the final episode because I wanted to I wanted to relate and feel that relate to like other people's like experience to watching that and to watching that play out, that final episode. And it was just incredible. And I
sobbed. I thought it was gorgeous.
Yeah.
The last 15 minutes especially.
The last 15 minutes destroyed me. Yeah,
I agree.
But it's fantastic. Raul Coley is incredible. If you're not super familiar with him, other than like his like social media posts and the fact that you're wanting for him to maybe be, Ezra Bridger in Mandalorian, watch iZombie, but also watch Bly Manor because he's incredible.
Yeah, he's great.
I also think there's a Photoshop you can find after a quick Googling where somebody Photoshopped him as Mr. Fantastic, and that's my pick. Like I love John Krasinski, but Raul Coley. After seeing that Photoshop, I'm like, damn. So, all
right, I think you're done, Dan.
Yeah, I'm just more. The more we're saying, like Schitt's Creek was another one where it's like I don't have much left in the tank. I'm just happy to add for whatever.
Yeah. All right then, PJ. What's your number one?
My number one is something that I did not expect to love nearly as much as I did, and it is The Last Dance, which was an ESPN miniseries documentary, which was all about the final season of the Chicago Bulls before Jordan and the team no longer was the greatest basketball team in the world, and the storytelling involved in it, the way it breaks everything down player by player over the years, but as you're going into their last dance, is absolutely phenomenal. It's some of the best storytelling I've ever seen. It's one of the best movies I've ever seen, and I was so engrossed. I've watched it twice through already. I think it's just phenomenal. I love it, man. I mean, obviously, we talk a little bit about sports here. We don't talk about it a lot, but like Maxwell and I and Tim and Dan, we all like sports to a very intense degree, and basketball is one of my favorites. And I mean, I was real young when that last dance happened, and so to kind of go back and relive it in that way and being older and really being able to take it all in was really exciting to me, because I remember when Jordan retired. I remember how all that went down. I remember that. I was young though, man. I was real young. So to kind of revisit it, it was a magical thing.
Everyone says it's great. I haven't watched it. I'm a big sports fan. Basketball is not high up on my list, but I have respect for it, and I need to watch this. Everyone says it's great.
Yeah, I need to watch it. I was a big fan of the '90s Bulls, and I followed all Jordan's career, and also I am a diehard Steve Kerr fan because he's a University of Arizona alumni, and I just think he's a great person. And so I've been wanting to watch. I just haven't watched it yet, but I need to watch it because I think
you guys will love
I remember watching. I saw every Bulls finals, in the '90s, and I was a giant Bulls fan in the '90s because of Jordan. So
I had Bulls gear in the '90s. Like my dad kept buying me Bulls jerseys and Bulls hats just because everyone did.
I had a couple different pairs of Jordans. When I was in middle school and high school. So.
I have 3 or 4 pairs of Jordans now. I love his kicks.
We actually made a joke because our channel started not long into when The Last Dance was going, and we would basically tee up some of our shows and it was coming right after. And so the joke in the beginning was that we were trying to get everyone who was appointment viewing The Last Dance to come and hang out with us after. And so we always thought it was a lead-in for some of it, which always made me laugh. I fucking love basketball. Baseball is my...
Where is it streaming? Is it on Netflix?
Netflix.
It is. It's on Netflix.
It's on Netflix, yeah.
I'll watch it soon.
Yeah.
Well, that leads me to my number one.
Before you get too far, though.
Please, I'm sorry.
No. That Last Dance is something I did see this year as well. My wife is one of the ones where she'll watch it and then she's like, "Oh, I'm a Chicago Bulls fan now. I want to watch the Chicago Bulls."
Oh God.
But that's how the storytelling is really good, because my wife she loves sports when she can get into it. If there's a narrative to sports, she latches onto it and she loves it that much more. And The Last Dance was one of those ones, they do a really good job of, I think there's 7 or 8 episodes. I can't remember.
I think it's 8 altogether.
But they dedicate one to, at first, the big 3, but then you get into more Steve Kerr. You get more Steve Coach.
Oh, is it
there's
10?
Okay. So, but then they start going and they start giving you all Phil Jackson, and they give you everyone's history and how it ties into the like PJ said, the storytelling is kind of like what you got with OJ Made in America. It's a very similar type of storytelling about the last
OJ
season.
Made in America was incredible.
I think this is on that level.
It's on
Is it the same director?
I don't know.
I mean, they were both 30 by 30s, so it's probably a lot of the same team, to be honest.
Got it.
It's one of those things where you could tell they took the care with the content that they had, because they even say in the beginning, it's like a film documentary crew was granted different director, but was granted like unprecedented like access to the Bulls and everything they were doing in that final season, which is how you get this documentary 20 some odd years later.
Some of the Rodman stories are fucking crazy.
They're so funny.
Want that noted.
All right. I have so much stuff to add to my list. There's just so much content.
There's always.
All right. That brings me to my number one.
It will, Reef. It will.
Well, it won the Emmy for Best Documentary Series, so I don't think it's gonna, because they
might not have been
changed the rules.
Yeah. So
OJ Made in America somehow ended up being eligible for both Emmys and Oscars, and after that they changed the rules.
Oh, interesting.
But yeah, my last one is probably not a surprise to anyone who knows me, follows me, talks to me. In fact, Brandy predicted it. I think last week or the week before. It's Queen's Gambit. This show blew me away on every level. Every episode is written and directed by Scott Frank, who was Oscar nominated for writing Out of Sight and Logan. It was 7 episodes that are so smart, so compelling, so elegant. Sort of much like you were talking about with The Last Dance. It's about a woman falling in love with chess and engaging in chess competitions, which doesn't necessarily sound like the most riveting story, but both because of the character work, Anya Taylor-Joy is astounding in the lead role, and the way the chess sequences are filmed, it is so compelling and exciting that I couldn't believe it. But it's not just Anya Taylor-Joy. You have Marielle Heller in there playing her mom, who is a filmmaker who directed Can You Ever Forgive Me? And the movie where Tom Hanks played Mr. Rogers and Diary of a Teenage Girl. And she had said after she finished the Tom Hanks Mr. Rogers movie that she wanted another challenge. And she got offered this role. And this is a big role. It's a tough role. It's a very difficult role. And she knocked it out of the park. And she's married to Jorma Taccone. So by that alone, I love her. But the score is incredible. I just love this from top to bottom. I would watch it all again in a heartbeat. And I've been listening to the score nonstop. It's just a beautiful, elegant, smart, lavish show. And then you have 2 guys in there who are known from stuff they did as a child, who I thought were just awesome. First, you have Harry Melling, who played Dudley Dursley, who becomes a boyfriend and friend of Beth. And it was so good. And then Thomas Brody Sangster, who is a little kid from Love Actually, who plays like he's like the cowboy of chess. He's sort of like the badass. Like he wears a cowboy hat and like a leather trench coat and has a mustache, and he's so cool. And I just love all the interpersonal relationships.
He looks like Vincent Adult Man from BoJack Horseman.
A little bit, he really does. But I fell in love with Queen's Gambit so much, and that's why it's my number 1 in TV.
Yeah, I need to watch it still.
It's on my list.
It was really good.
I'm trying to find it real quick.
I was almost going to watch it this week, but then I just wanted to get some movies out of the way instead. So that,
and even though it's 7 episodes and they're all about an hour long, I watched it all in one day. I couldn't stop.
It's fantastic storytelling.
I finally found it. Reefism. I usually watch a ton of international television. I didn't get a lot of it this year, to be honest with you.
I like Dark a lot.
Yeah, I did like Dark a lot. Obviously,
there's an Israeli spy show. Oh God, what's it called? I can't remember.
And I'm a big Doctor Who fan. Obviously, I've talked about that time and again. I should have brought that up. I did watch the Doctor Who special that aired last night. Was it last night? I guess last night or the night before, and it finally aired. Whatever it was, I did watch that, and I've made no real secret. I love Doctor Who. I don't love the new seasons. I don't like the way that Chibnall is writing the show. I love Jodie Whittaker, so don't take that as a knock at her. I think the writing is bad, and so that rumor today that she's leaving the role particularly irks me if Chibnall stays, because I'm not interested in him staying. I want him to leave and her to stay, but what do I know?
Before we get into movies, I made a couple notes on my favorite books and video games of 2020. All of these books are books that came out this year, and all the video games are games that came out this year. I'll just go them through real quick. I won't spend too much time. The books and games are in no order. So the first is these are books. A Beautifully Foolish Endeavor by Hank Green. He's the brother of John Green, who wrote like Fault in Our Stars and stuff like that. This was a sequel to his book, an absolutely remarkable thing. It's a duology. I love both of them. I thought this one was so smart, because him and his brother do a lot of vlogging and are very online personas. He has so much understanding of the way social media influences the world. They're just really smart sci-fi stories that feel very, very modern in a way that a lot of other writing doesn't, just because of the worlds he travels in. Highly recommended. Next is Cinderella is Dead by Kaylin Bayron. This is a young adult fantasy novel that takes place in a kingdom where Cinderella was real. And it's sort of an oppressive, anti-feminist society where the king has very strict rules about the way women can behave, and how women once a year have to go and get picked by a man to marry, and if after 3 times they don't get picked, basically they get taken away. It turns into a sort of a rebellion, anarchist story with a beautiful queer romance. It was so like audacious and progressive, and I absolutely loved it. Next is another young adult novel called The Gravity of Us by Phil Stamper. It is another queer romance that takes place in Houston near the Space Center, set among a new reality TV show they're making with new astronauts who are about to go on new missions to space. I thought it was really tender and beautiful, but I also loved all of the space stuff, the astronaut stuff, and I thought it balanced them really well. I've actually become somewhat friendly with the author on Twitter. We talk sometimes, and he has a new book coming out this year I'm really excited about. Next, it's Home Before Dark by Riley Sager. Riley Sager is pretty much writing my favorite horror novels these days. This is an incredibly smart riff on the typical haunted house story. I found it really chilling. I had trouble sleeping at some points. And the way it all unfolds. So the way it's constructed is it goes back and forth between what's happening in modern time and then a book that the main character's dad wrote about his experience when the main character was younger, living in this haunted house. And it's a book that in the world of the book became very popular. So you'll read a chapter like in the fake book and then come to modern times where the main character is grown up and is going back to this old house where the hauntings happen to renovate it, to put it on the market and sell it. I thought it was so smart, so scary, great characters. But really read all of Riley Sager's books. And the last one is Anxious People by Frederick Bachman. He wrote A Man Called Ove and a bunch of other stuff. This book blew me away. I found it so witty and clever, so affirming, so empathetic, so many great, rich characters. And I just absolutely loved it.
Real quick, I do want to say Chris Taylor brought up Tanya Roberts passed away earlier this evening. We were actually talking about that off camera. Very sad, obviously. A lot of people know her as Midge from that 70s show. Tim and I were big Bond fans, obviously, so that was also one for us. She was in A View to a Kill. She was a really fantastic actress. Sad way to start the year. So our thoughts and prayers with Tanya Roberts' family.
Yeah, that was sad. I'll talk about video games real quick, and then we can do movies, which I think is the main event. There's 6 video games I wanted to mention. First is the remaster/remake of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2. I thought they did a fantastic job with these. Good. Absolute blast to play. And they not only remastered it, but they really expanded on it, made new challenges. Just awesome.
The soundtrack is amazing.
Yeah, so much nostalgia, but it doesn't feel like an afterthought. It feels like they really rebuilt it from the ground up. Mm-hmm. Next is, and this is in no order, Spider-Man Miles Morales, which was a PS5 launch game. Certainly the best thing I've played on the PS5 so far. I have not finished it. I'm savoring it. I've also been busy, but it's stunning to look at. The storytelling is great. It has a lot of authenticity in its characters. Its depiction of New York is great. I love it. Next is Ghost of Tsushima, which is just mind-blowingly good and beautiful and awesome. If I had to pick like my number one game of the year, it would probably be that. Then the next two are Switch games, Paper Mario The Origami King, which was just a blast to play, RPG-style game, and then Animal Crossing, the new one for Switch, which I played more than any other game this year, especially when it first came out and we were like right in the thick of quarantine. It's just so much fun and relaxing and such a great game. And then finally, my other one is Hades, which is available, I think, on pretty much all of the different platforms. It's a dungeon quest game, hack and slash, but what's so great about it is every time you re-go to start a run, you learn new things, you get new weapons, you meet new characters. The music's fucking great. It's just a really, really fun game. That's only like $20. It's an indie game. It's not like a major studio, and just an absolute blast.
Yeah, I didn't play enough games this year to even like get into that. Tony Hawk was like my one true love. Obviously, I had so much fun revisiting it. I know. Okay. Thanks, buddy.
I have not played The Last of Us 2, so I didn't leave it off for any bullshit reason. I just haven't gotten to it yet. And I know that's a hot topic this year.
I was going to say, I think the only game I got this year that actually came out that I played all the way through was Borderlands 3, because I was a huge Borderlands 2 person, and this was the first time I'd gotten a FPS and RPG on a console in years. So in the quarantine, I played all the way through Borderlands 3, and it was a lot of fun.
I did play Borderlands 3. I haven't beaten it yet, but I do love the Borderlands series. It's amazing.
Yeah. Brandy just got her Switch and she's obsessed with Animal Crossing. Brandy, we have to exchange friend codes so we can go visit each other's islands. I honestly haven't been on my island in a couple months, but I should go check on it. They're going to be like, well, where have you been?
It's going to be like
half my residence.
I was going to say, it's going to be like what happens because I don't go into my house on our island, and my wife's the one taking care of it. So she'll go in there like once a month, and she has to kill cockroaches because they'll just run around in your house.
Yep.
Well, I'm ready, man. Are you ready?
So we're going to do our top 10 films of 2020. This is the main event. This is the one I worked very hard on. Spoiler alert, I have very carefully written blog post that I'm going to post after this is done, complimenting what I talk about here tonight. So we'll do this similarly to TV. We'll go around. We'll each give 3, starting at 10, working our way up, and then ending with the top one. And then at the end, if we want to name a couple honorable mentions that didn't make the list, that is cool. We'll start with Tim. I'm so excited to see what everyone mentions. This is great.
So my number 10 is a documentary that came out this year. It was it screened, I think, at like some festival in like 2019, but then it had a limited, I think, theatrical release, and then it released to Shudder. But it's called Scream Queen: My Nightmare on Elm Street, and it's a documentary about Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2: Freddy's Revenge. And it's specifically about Mark Patton, who played the lead character of Jesse in that film, and his experience with the film, being a closeted gay man while the movie was being made and released, and the kind of like the reputation the film garnered, that it had a homoerotic, as they say, subtext to it. And the fact that like the filmmakers weren't really acknowledging that and weren't really claiming that they did that intentionally, and then later on kind of saying they did that intentionally because it became kind of popular to say that. So he had a very complex journey with that film, being the lead character in that film, and he loves his experience, but it's also had a negative effect on him, and it's just kind of interesting to see like his journey in that film, and then his journey through the documentary, actually, because what he wants to do ultimately is confront the writer of the film and kind of have a conversation with him about what his words and what like the film actually did to him. And they have that conversation eventually in the documentary, and it's really good. It's really fascinating. I mean, the movie is kind of maligned, and it's not the best of the Nightmare series, but I also don't think it's the worst. So that's my number 10. I would definitely check it out. It's on Shudder.
Yeah, that sounds great. I want to see it. And I wasn't sure. I had to look it up. I know there's a documentary that was supposed to come to Shudder this year, but got pushed, or last year, but got pushed to 2021, called Horror is Queer.
Yeah, I think that one's being made by the same people that did Horror Noir.
Horror Noir, yeah. And I wanted to just make sure it wasn't that one, because I'm super looking forward to that one. But this sounds great. I'm definitely going to check it out.
Yeah, it's great. It's a great film. It's really cool to see, Mark Patton's story and stuff.
Yeah, I watched that off of Tim's recommendation. It's really good if you get a chance to see it.
Yeah,
I will. I'm going to add it to my watch list for sure.
Also, check out Shudder. But there's some things on my list.
Goddamn right.
Yes. So we're going to talk about Shudder a little more. So let's see here. My number 9 is a movie that came out, I think it was in November when it came out. and that is, and it kind of like was sprung on us, and that is Borat subsequent movie film.
Very nice.
I'm a big fan of the first Borat, and I still enjoy the first Borat. I watched it right before the new one came out. It's like definitely like of the two films, it's the one that's definitely not going to be for everyone, and it doesn't. And the jokes don't like. I mean, they still work. They're just more like hard to watch in a sense. But I thought Borat, the second Borat movie, Borat subsequent movie film, I thought it was funny, but it also had just a great like heart to it and a great underlying story of a father and daughter relationship, and I thought that was beautiful, and I loved kind of like the way that played out. So yeah, that's my number 9, Borat subsequent movie film. And then my number 8 is Soul, Pixar's Soul, which I just fell in love with. I thought it was incredible, beautiful. You know, it really connected to me. Being a story, you know, about life and embracing, you know, the time you have now and not focusing on, you know, you should have goals, but not like letting them be your entire focus of your existence, and like learning to like appreciate your journey as you go through life, essentially, and not like missing anything. And I thought that was beautiful. And of course, you know, told in the, the same Pixar way. I saw someone I forgot, someone I know like posted something on Instagram, their Instagram story, and they were like, "Oh, I'm watching the Pixar movie and I'm crying." And they were like, "I can't believe I'm crying." I didn't reply back, but I wanted to be like, "It's Pixar. What did you expect?"
Yeah, like Pixar makes movies that make you cry.
I mean, that's what they do, especially the last like 10 years. I mean,
pretty much the only Pixar movies that don't make me cry are the Cars movies.
Yeah,
and they're just not designed to do so.
You cry for a different reason for those.
Yeah, well, I like the
I've never
first
seen them
and third
actually.
Cars.
So, I do like Cars Land, but yeah. So that's my number 8, Soul. Those are my 3 right there.
I feel like Soul might come up again later.
Yeah, I imagine
it
will.
I think so.
Dan?
I did cobble together a top 10 list. This is also being said that like upon revisiting this, I've only seen 16 movies that were released this year. So this is going to be, it gets a little thin towards the end, but it was one of those ones where I'm thinking about it and like trying to
Bloodshot
wait.
is on your list. I'm fucking kicking you from this. That's all I'm going to say.
Vin Diesel is an American treasure. No. A few of these did surprise me. Once I get towards the end, that's when it gets to be a little bit more like what has really stayed with me and what because I haven't revisited a lot because again, so much content to consume. But at 10, I put Project Power. I did really like what they did with that Netflix film. There's a theme of Netflix in my top 10 list as I'm seeing. I like Project Power. I like seeing Joseph Gordon-Levitt actually getting stuff to do because he's a little on the picky side when he's not doing hit record stuff and like crowdsourcing projects. But I liked him. I like Jamie Foxx. I like what they were doing. It definitely feels like they're trying to open up that universe and give it its own like story going forward. At 9, I put Onward. I think I'd like to revisit it at some point. I definitely liked where they were going with it. I think it was really emotionally impactful for me, having lost my dad early in 2020. And then this coming out in March, I'm just bawling at the end of this movie. Like, I like the adventure aspect that they're trying to do with it. But then when you add that other layer on top of it, I'm like, it was very emotionally pulling, as most Pixar movies are. This one with just that added extra layer, though. And then for my 8, for another Netflix one, I put The Old Guard. I really liked what they did with that film. Anytime you're putting Charlize Theron front and center of an action movie, it's already going to have a couple of like heads up as far as like how good this movie is going to be. And then Max helped me out with his name, the gentleman who was also in The Queen's Gambit, the actor who was the bad guy in The Old Guard.
Oh my God. Harry Melling.
Harry Melling, yes, and he's great. He's great as the bad guy.
Happy New Year, Abby.
Hey, what's up, Abby?
Happy New Year. But yeah, those are my bottom 3 as far as
I like The Old Guard a lot. I agree. Harry Melling played like basically a thinly veiled version of Martin Shkreli, the farmer bro.
Yeah.
In The Old Guard. Although it didn't make my top 10 or honorable mentions, there's I liked it a lot, and I'm looking forward to a sequel. But there's one scene that really resonated with me in that movie where the 2 male love interests are captured.
Oh God!
And that he has that speech where they're like, "What are you, boyfriends?" And then he goes on this incredible speech
Yeah.
That that was like the highlight of that film for me.
Agreed. That's the best scene in the movie, and it's not an action scene, and that's an action movie.
Yeah, but Gina Prince Blythewood, who directed that, is such a great filmmaker. Love and Basketball and some other stuff. So I love that she got an opportunity to make like a big comic book movie.
Yeah.
All right, PJ.
All right. So my number 10, which surprised me considerably, just because I'm really not the biggest Christopher Nolan fan, and that was Tenet. Yeah. Okay. I enjoyed this immensely. It's actually my favorite Nolan film since The Prestige. I thought it was actually like a very well crafted time travel Bond movie that the more I think about it, the more I really enjoy it. I think the performances are amazing. John David Washington is a fucking star. Rob Pattinson is really great in it. The action is cool. Kenneth Branagh, as always, is just a goddamn good villain. Like, anything when Kenneth Branagh is a villain is always fun for me. So that was good. And I just thought it was clever. It was very smart. There's a great character actor who shows up about 2/3 of the way into the movie that I wasn't expecting. So that was a really nice surprise. Really, I'm surprised that I enjoyed it as much as I did, and I know that Maxwell's like, you loved it, you enjoyed it so much, and it's your number 10. I know, but I'm still going back. Like, there's other things I like a little bit more, but the fact that Nolan made my top 10 is a nice feeling, because it's been a long time since I felt that way about any of his movies. So that was a good one for me. My number 9 was a movie that should have come out here last year, but it didn't. Well, technically the year before, but we finally got it last year, and that was Lupin the Third, the first. This was the first film in 23 years in the Lupin franchise. I'm a big anime fan, but specifically the Lupin franchise is one that I grew up on, and the movie and the characters took the jump into CG animation, which was part of the reason it was called the first. It was kind of a double play on what they were doing, but the movie is really fun and fantastic, and it just exudes all that pulpy, exciting adventure that I love so much. You guys know I'm a big pulp narrative type guy, like John Carter, The Rocketeer, Indiana Jones. It falls into that kind of line of storytelling. They brought the original cast back for the voiceover work, which I thought was fantastic, and it really just gave it an air of authenticity for me that just was kind of nice. And in a year that was kind of a fucking shit show, sometimes going back to that, something that felt like a warm blanket, and to see Lupin kind of fully realized in a new way was really exciting to me. And then my number 7 is another film from Shudder.
Number
8, I'm sorry, was one from Shudder. So we're going to be talking a little bit more about Shudder, it sounds like, as we go on. But this was a horror film that was made during the pandemic that we watched here that destroyed Chris Clark and his psyche, and that is Host. It's not even 60 minutes long, but this is a fully realized, excellent horror film, all taking place over a Zoom call that is absolutely terrifying. I think it's one of the scariest movies in the last decade easily, just because it was made by people who figured out how to use the pandemic to their strengths, and I just thought it was so smart and so fun, and I'll never get over watching Chris Clark watching it and not surviving very well.
Fucking great night.
It was the fucking best, and Host rocks. I know quite a few of you were watching it with us, so if you were here, I hope that you guys got to enjoy that as much as we did.
I have 6 honorable mentions, and Host is one of them, for what it's worth.
Love it.
So, all right. So, starting with my number 10, it is The Invisible Man. This came out in theaters in February, directed by Leigh Whannell. It is such a smart modernization of the classic story, with an emphasis on sort of the way women are treated with toxicity and gaslit, and how people sometimes have such an unnecessarily hard time believing them. Elizabeth Moss is incredible in the lead role, and with every successive film he makes, Leigh Whannell just gets better and better at building horror set pieces, building suspense. There are some truly terrifying moments in there, some truly badass moments. And it's just, for me, one of my favorite studio horror films in a long time. I just thought it was so excellently done from top to bottom. And I saw it twice in theaters, and I've watched it at home since, and it holds up really, really well. And Oliver Jackson Cohen, who's in both of the Haunting Netflix series, is really chilling and good in it. And so handsome. So handsome. My number 9 film is Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always by Eliza Hittman. This is a very quiet and understated film about a 17-year-old girl in Pennsylvania who finds out that she's pregnant and wants to get an abortion but in Pennsylvania, you cannot get an abortion if you're a minor without parental consent. So her and her cousin take a bus to New York City where you can get an abortion if you're under 18 without parental consent. I thought this film was such a empathetic and beautiful portrayal of the struggles that a lot of women have to go through to get abortions, the judgment that people pass. I think the way it portrayed every aspect of her getting the abortion, the conversations she has with clinicians, the medical procedures was so eye-opening and presented with what felt like a lot of authenticity. The lead actress, Sydney Flanagan, is incredible. And also the other aspect of the film that I thought was eye-opening was it's very subtly done, but every step of her journey, their journey, her and her cousin, they are just presented with the way that they get treated by men as teenage girls. And it just shows how difficult it can be to navigate this fucked up world when you're any woman, really. It's available on HBO Max. It did play in theaters in April, but I thought it was just fantastic. And then my number 8, this is a Danish film. It's in Danish with English subtitles. It's called Another Round. It stars Mads Mikkelsen, who is one of my absolute favorite actors, directed by Thomas Vinterberg, who also did The Hunt, and was one of the founders of the Dogma 95 movement with Lars von Trier back in the 90s. Like a couple other films that end up on my list, this is a movie that's ultimately about embracing the joy in life and taking time to stop and appreciate the little things that are really what matter. But I found the concept so intriguing. It's really about midlife crises and the existential journey you can go on. But there are 4 high school teachers who read a philosophical study that says that humans are born with their blood alcohol level too low, and in order to truly embrace life, you should have at least a 0.5 blood alcohol level. So they start intentionally day drinking and charting their blood alcohol level and making notes on how that impacts their life, their teaching. It's a really beautiful film. And it has, bar none, my favorite ending of the year. The ending is so cathartic. I went back and rewatched that scene a couple times. It's available on VOD now. And unfortunately, it's the only foreign non-English language film that made my list. I didn't get to as many of them as I usually do, but it's really quite good.
I find it interesting that you brought it up where this filmmaker came from, because that premise sounds like the opposite of a Lars von Trier movie.
Right.
I'm not the biggest Lars von Trier fan.
Vinterberg and von Trier, even though they co-created the Dogma 95 movement, their works are always very different. It was just their approach to making films in the 90s that they agreed on. But Vinterberg is a lot more of a humanist, a lot more about because he also directed Far From the Madding Crowd, which was in English a couple years ago. So yeah, in terms of content, they are on different ends of the wavelength.
Okay.
All right, back to Tim with 7, 6, and 5.
My number 7 is a movie that I watched this week. So I have 3 movies that I watched this week that made my top 10. So, maybe if I marinate on them, they'll fall out. But I don't think they will. So my number 7 is Sound of Metal, the Amazon film with Riz Ahmed. Just fantastic performance by him, fantastic story. Paul Raci, who plays a character in the film, is fantastic as well in a supporting role. The sound design, of someone going deaf is executed very well. You feel like what they're kind of going through. And I thought the last 5 minutes of the film was incredibly beautiful and very simple, but I really enjoyed this movie, and I think Riz Ahmed is fantastic. I think his performance is probably my favorite of the year. I hope he wins some awards for it. I think he will. But yeah, the movie is great. So check it out. It's on Amazon. My number 6 is something I rewatched this week, even though I had seen it when it dropped. It's on Netflix. It's a horror film. It's called His House, which is a horror film that's about I believe I'm not sure. They're refugees from Africa. I don't remember what country specifically, maybe Nigeria. But they come to the UK seeking asylum, and they get placed in a house, and some things are happening. It's got a haunted element to it, and it deals a lot with kind of like accepting your personal demons and your past and things that you may have done that haunt you, and while also dealing with like the aspect of racism and people adjusting to being in a new place and trying to find their own way. And it's genuinely got some really scary moments, and it's got Javier Botet in it, who's known for playing weird things. If you've seen any of the REC movies, he's a very interesting guy, and he always plays something. So there's definitely he's in the movie. So there's
is he the guy who plays the Crooked Man?
Yeah, he plays the Crooked Man. He plays the leper in the first It movie.
Yep.
So yeah, he suffers from Marfan syndrome, so he's got a very unique body shape because of his condition. So he's always very emaciated and whatnot. But his house is great, and I watched it a second time, and because I was like, I'm pretty sure this is in my top 10. So I watched it a second time, like, yeah, it's definitely in my top 10. It's great. Check it out. And also the main actress, she was in Lovecraft Country. She plays the older sister of what's her name in the show, and she's fantastic in Lovecraft Country. And she was also in Batman vs Superman. So yeah, she's really good. My number 5 is a movie that I was kind of like unsure if I should put it on here, but it is feature length, and I watched it today, and I loved it so much. I'm like, I'm going to put it on there because I loved it so much, and that's Mangrove, which is the small axe film by Steve McQueen. I've only watched one of them so far because I was like, I want to at least watch one of them, and this is the one I want to watch the most. Start up with, and I loved it. I mean, it actually kicked another movie off my list that's similar. So I had The Trial of the Chicago 7 on my list, probably like in a similar space, and I swapped it for Mangrove because I just thought that was a better. I just found it more compelling, and I thought it was a better told courtroom story, and I found it more like emotional and more meaningful to me. Even though obviously I am not Black and I don't have that experience that they have in that film, but I just found it more meaningful and better told, and I just thought it was a very compelling story. I don't know if everyone's seen it on here, but it's beautiful.
I watched all of the Small Axe anthology and thought they were all excellent in their own ways. Mangrove and Lovers Rock are my two favorites.
Yeah.
I decided not to include them in my list because I don't know. But in the piece I wrote, I did mention them. Definitely watch, if not all of them, Mangrove and Lovers Rock, but really do try and watch all of them on Amazon if you can.
Yeah. So yeah, that's my next two there. But Mangrove, yeah, it's incredible. I loved it. I absolutely loved it today. And I still love Trial of Chicago 7. So, that's definitely my honorable mentions. I still love that movie a lot as well. I just didn't want to have two courtroom kind of style movies on my list.
That makes sense.
I swapped them.
Thank you, Brandy. All right, Dan.
So my 7 was Bill and Ted Face the Music. It was one of those movies that it's very strange. Like, you hear projects get caught in development hell all the time, but like a movie that's been in development hell for 30 some years, still being able to come out and really recapture and just recreate and reconnect with an audience that literally grew as the movie did, but they're still able to bring you things that are like fresh and ideas, and there's like an uplifting twist, and like it's one of those things where it was like a nice palate cleanse in the middle of all the hell that was going on in August. And it was one of the ones that, like, there's the further up I get about my list, it's more the things that resonated with me and more things that I thought about. And Bill and Ted is like the start of that, to where it's like, I haven't gone back to this movie, but I know I'm going to go back to this movie. Like, it's one of those things that, like, I will put on. Like, I don't know how many times I've seen the first two, and then to cap it all off with a third. And you're talking about a good, fun trilogy that's got a fantastic heart that you can clear in under 5 hours. Like, that's just not something that really you get to see. You don't get to see a nice swan song often in today's age. And then number 6, I was surprised. This is I think I saw 2 movies in theaters this year. Number 1 was Cats in 2020, and I saw it on New Year's Day. Clever Eric and I saw it, and that was an experience. And then number 2 was The Gentleman, and I saw it, and that's my number 6. And it was nice, Patty. And it was one of the things. The Gentleman. It took me about almost halfway through it, and because I feel bad anytime Anytime you get a new Guy Ritchie movie, every trailer is cut. If it's even kind of gangster, every trailer is cut like Snatch. Every trailer is cut like Lock, Stock, because they know how to market them. And it took me about halfway through, it'd be like, okay, this isn't Snatch, this isn't Lock, Stock, but I think I can get behind what they're showing me here. And I think it was a nice little return to form for him, for me, and like the framing of the storytelling with Hugh Grant just going over this whole story again and like his ideas of it, like the framing device worked really well for me. Really big fan of him working with Charlie Hunnam. I think Guy Ritchie and Charlie Hunnam that's going to be one of those things where it's like he's going to keep popping up in his movies. Clearly,
100%.
Clearly after King Arthur. Yeah. And I didn't hate that movie as much as most. So I like that, and I like what he was able to do with McConaughey and then Henry Golding, and like that's a movie I really, really want to go back to and revisit it again. And then we're doing fives as well, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
My five kind of shocked me. My five is Sonic the Hedgehog.
Oh, interesting.
I was a little surprised because it was one of those ones where it was like, I didn't think I would enjoy this movie as much as I did, and I was really hesitant to even kind of give it a shot. And I saw it much later in the year, and like, it had way more heart than I was expecting. I can actually say I was impressed by the CGI work that they did in retooling it and releasing it 4 months later. I don't like reaction culture from studios, and this is one of the times where I can say, oh no, I agree with what you did, and like, it's turned into a better movie because you've changed how an audience is interpreting your main character. And I'm a huge James Marsden stan. I think we should hold his name up in the Hollywood Chris's. I think he does not get the recognition he deserves. I won't use the word underrated because we're retiring those words here at the PJCN.
Yes, we are.
But I think he deserves a lot of recognition. I like it made me really happy. It was one of those movies that like I finished watching it and I'm like, that was really enjoyable. So that's why I'm surprised it made it so high up my list. So yeah.
I'm glad it made someone's list, to be honest. Like, I mean, I went back and I enjoyed it more than I remembered when I saw it in theaters, so at least there's that.
All right, PJ. 7, 6, and 5.
All right, so my number 7 was a movie that I was surprised made it as high as it did, and I don't know why. I'm a big fan of two of the major talents involved with it, and the one being Gavin O'Connor, who we're watching a movie of tomorrow night, and the other being Ben Affleck, and that is The Way Back. The Way Back was a film that I was very excited about that ended up wrecking me. I was not anticipating it was sold as a sports movie, which fair enough. There are sports involved. He plays a high school basketball coach, but the truth of the matter is it's really a movie about a dude who's an alcoholic who doesn't know how to handle that and the situation it puts him in life. In a lot of ways, it reminded me of Hoosiers was about the father played by Dennis Hopper, and you focused on him for the entire movie. And it's such a beautifully heartbreaking story that has a real redemptive quality to it, and the fact that sports took a backseat was very fascinating because, again, Gavin O'Connor is known for doing a lot of sports type stuff, and so, but then at the same time it also felt so real for Affleck. It felt like he was telling a story that obviously hit him in a very personal place. I don't really want to get into his own personal stuff, but I felt like his real life experience really hinged on what made the performance so good. It's a performance that's so good that I hope it gets some Academy recognition this year. I just think he's fucking incredible in it. So if you haven't seen The Way Back, I highly recommend it. I just think it's so awesome. My number 6 is the previously mentioned The Invisible Man. I love this movie. I think Leigh Whannell is just incredibly talented. I'm very excited to see what he's going to do with Escape from New York. Elizabeth Moss is excellent. There's not a lot to talk about with it. I think Maxwell very well covered it in what he was talking about, but loved seeing a contemporary take on the classic Universal monster done in such an interesting way that felt very, very topical in all the right ways. It's just so good. And my number 5, another movie from a filmmaker that I was surprised made it on my list because I hadn't liked one of his movies in quite a long time, and that was Judd Apatow and that is The King of Staten Island, starring Pete Davidson. This movie surprised the hell out of me. I thought that this was one of the most real and just kind of life-affirming movies that I saw all year. I thought Pete Davidson gave a hell of a performance as a lead, something I was not expecting. And again, similar to Affleck, it feels like the story he's telling is coming from a very real place, especially dealing with the fact that he lost his dad, who was really a firefighter in New York, and like the character kind of going through the motions. Marissa Tomei is fantastic in it, but specifically also Bill Burr is awesome. And I've brought this up a lot during the Mandalorian after shows. If you thought Bill Burr was surprisingly great in that, please see The King of Staten Island. I think that his performance is part of the thing that makes the movie so fucking good. It's just a really, really fantastic film. I think it's funny. I think it's heartbreaking. I think it's beautiful. And it was one that I watched it like 3 times the weekend it dropped. And I was just so into it. Really, really check out King of Staten Island.
Was that 5?
That was 5.
Oh, okay, my bad.
No, you're good.
All right. I thought that was 6. All right, so my number 7 is the previously mentioned Soul, Pixar film by Pete Docter and co-directed by Kemp Powers. I agree with everything Tim said. It's a film about stopping to smell the roses. I know that's a simplification of it, but that's ultimately what it's about. And it's done with so much intellect and strangeness and weirdness as only Pixar can. It's, I think, arguably the most mature film Pixar has yet made. But it really affected me. I thought it was beautiful. Of course, animation is great. Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross wrote an incredible score. And John Baptiste came in with some great jazz compositions. Jamie Foxx's vocal performance is terrific, and he's supported nicely by Tina Fey and Graham Norton, who I was so excited to see get a big role in a Pixar movie because I love his talk show. It's just a lovely movie that really takes you on a journey and really makes you reflect on your own life, I think. And there's a joke in it about the Knicks that is one of my favorite jokes I've seen in a long time. I felt that on a personal level. My number 6 choice continues the theme of films that ultimately are about appreciating the little things in life, and that is Palm Springs. It's a riff on the classic Time Loop. It is done with such humor and pathos, with an emphasis on the science fiction. Andy Samberg and Kristen Milioti are both fantastic. This film I watched a couple times right when it came out because it's also a nice, efficient, breezy 90 minutes. And they accomplished so much in that. And I think the way it handled the time loop and some of the things Andy's character and then Kristen's character get to do is just so funny and lovely. Really, I was shocked by how much I love this movie. And how affecting I found it. I love Andy Samberg. He's been in some of my favorite comedies. So I expected this to be a pretty typical Lonely Island movie, which means you get good laughs. I did not expect it to be so heartfelt and handled with grace like it was. And then my number 5 is Wolfwalkers. This is an Irish animated film by the company called Cartoon Saloon. Directed by Tom Moore and Ross Stewart. There are no two ways about it. The animation in this film is some of the most beautiful I've ever seen. It's hand-drawn, which is you're like paying for the crowd here. Like any modern hand-drawn film, I'm in awe of. But the line work, it uses a lot of influence from like Chinese woodblock art. It was just so stunning to look at, but it's also just an incredibly rousing and a lovely story about 2 young girls, and one who lives inside a town behind a wall, one who lives in the forest, and the drama that unfolds. I don't really want to give anything away because there's a lot of nice surprises, but it was a great adventure, great characters, beautiful to look at. I thought the voice performances are great. Sean Bean does a great job in it. Some great tuneful like Irish folk music. Just a really lovely, beautiful film. And Pixar has won the Oscar many, many, many times. And I anticipate Soul is probably going to win again, and it would not be undeserved, but I would love to see Wolf Walker's take it, because I think celebrating hand-drawn animation and other studios that come in with unique approaches to animation makes me very happy, and I just love this film. It's available on Apple Plus or Apple TV, whatever it's called. That brings us back to Tim with his 4, 3, and 2. We're getting in the nitty-gritty now.
So my number 4 is the film that's been mentioned twice already, but it's The Invisible Man by Lee Winnell.
Yeah.
And Elizabeth Moss, kills it in the role. Everyone's already kind of talked about the film, but yeah, it's incredible. It's scary. It's an interesting take on that classic story. I love the use of technology. I love specifically how Lee Winnell seems to be really obsessed with technology and using technology in his films. If you look at Upgrade in this film, also it's got a very, let's just say there's a scene in a restaurant that's crazy, and that scene in the restaurant when it happened, I was in a theater with nobody in it except for a couple other people, and that scene happens, and someone behind me just went, "Oh my god!"
I was not prepared for that sequence. Let me tell you.
But yeah, I think that movie's great. I love it. I've watched it a couple times since post theater. It's fantastic. My third film was actually my number one film for a good part of the year, and it's not like a typical movie. I don't even know if anyone else will have it on the list. I know Pat's seen it. I know he liked it. I'm not sure if it'll make his list after all, but and that's a movie that came out on Disney Plus.
And it's an honorable mention.
And it's a kids movie, but I think this movie is beautiful. And it's Timmy Failure, Mistakes Were Made, which is directed by his name's escaping me now, but it's the guy who directed Spotlight. Tom McCarthy, yeah, Spotlight. And I remember seeing the preview for this movie when they at the Disney Plus panel at D23 last year, and being like, "Wow, that movie actually looks pretty fun, pretty enjoyable." But yeah, it's a great movie. I don't know. I know Pat's seen it, but I would say don't sleep on it. It's super fun. It's got a lot of heart to it. The kid in the movie is absolutely incredible. He's hilarious. He's got a imaginary friend that's a polar bear named Total. You can't go wrong with that. It's a kid being a detective with imagination, and I don't know, it just took me back to being a kid and wanting to explore and wanting to have all the imagination you can have as a kid, and I really appreciated it.
You're really.
And I would love a sequel, because I think it's a series. I think it's the type of movie that's primed for a sequel. I don't know if it would be as good as the first one, but I think it's fun.
You also buried the lead here, sir. Wallace Shawn is in the movie.
Yeah, Wallace Shawn is in the movie, and he's great. And it's just super fun, and it's on Disney Plus. Check it out; it's great. And then my number 2, which is the film that jumped to my number 2 spot this week because I saw it for the first time this week, and that is what Maxwell just talked about a little bit ago, and that's Palm Springs. That movie, I just found that movie to be an absolute delight. I loved it. I thought Christina Lottie and Andy Samberg were great. J.K. Simmons is fantastic in the movie. Just way fun. A whole fun, interesting take on the time loop trope without making it seem like, oh, not this again. It was just a lot of fun and had a lot of heart to it, on top of being kind of one of those raunchy type comedies. I loved it. So yeah, that's my number 2. There we go.
Dan?
So we'll talk about some things that we've already talked about then, just because we're getting lower in the list or higher in the list. So that's just the nature of the beast. My 4 was Soul, for a lot of the reasons that we've already came across. And it's one of those ones where it was a different story than I'm used to Pixar telling, because it seems much more, it's weird to see them tell an existential story at the same time as such a specific story, because he's trying to get back to his own body in one day, but then you're dealing with all these existential themes going on at the same time. So I think that's going to really, the more I watch, I'm going to get a lot more out of it, to where it's the first viewing already impacted me to the point where it's 4, but it could very well go up higher, because it is a Pixar movie, and they're also tackling, we didn't even talk about, and this is just scrolling through things that I've seen, their attention to detail when it came to Black culture, and how they were showing that in this film. That's something that people have never seen. You're talking about edge lines, and just the detail in the hair that they're showing. So there's just so much involved with that. And yeah, clearly we all talked about the voice acting and how good the story was, and I don't have a lot to add to Soul. 3, you guys were laughing at my Sonic pick at 5, but my 3 was My Spy. That movie surprised the hell out of me. There's in a common theme for this year, because like we've talked about it a little bit before, but there's been some really highs and really lows in my year. But My Spy was one of those. I love action comedies in general, and My Spy felt like if Batista did Cop and a Half, which is a little bit how this movie came off. And like but the more I thought about it, I'm like, it's fun, it's charming, it has good twists, it has great humor. Batista is he's a legit good actor, and I'm happy he gets like the chance to show it in things like this. Granted, it's a stereotypical role, but he's not doing stereotypical things in it. And it was one of those things that like that movie really surprised me. Like I was looking forward to see it, and then after I saw it, I'm like, that was so enjoyable, and it really resonated strongly with me. And like Tim, my 2 is Palm Springs as well, to where it was like not much more to add to it. But like it's one of those things. It's a lot of fun to talk about after the fact. Like you get a lot of science later on in the movie, which is a lot of fun. Andy Samberg, I love seeing him getting more leading man things that like are more layered and more nuanced, and I'm glad Tim brought up J.K. Simmons too, because there's a lot to talk about him as well. And once you see kind of the twists, like even though you're in a time loop, they're really good at like showing different aspects of it. And when you see towards the end of the movie, just like the whole scope of how everyone's in it, Tyler Hoechlin, I think if that's his name as well, he also has a nice little cameo in there too.
Hoechlin?
Hoechlin? Is there an L? I don't know. But anyway, you know who I'm talking about. But yeah, that was my 2.
Awesome. PJ?
All right, so my number, what is this, 4? My number 4 was a movie...
4, 3, 2, yeah.
Yeah, my number 4 was a movie that was brought up a little bit earlier, and it's a movie that I was surprised could be as good as it was, 27 years later, and that was Bill and Ted Face the Music. Most people actually don't know, Box was born the night Bill and Ted Face the Music dropped on streaming, and I'm not joking about that, because we were all on a Zoom call, and I left the Zoom call to go watch the movie.
You were like, I don't care about my friends, I'm going to watch Bill and Ted's, and then we're like, we don't care about you, Box.
We all stayed up and got really crazy because it was late, and that's what happened.
And so I came back after, and that's when Box was kind of born. But Bill and Ted really surprised me just how sweet and wonderful and fun it could be. Like, it really reminded me just how heartfelt those movies really were, but I felt like this one took it to the next level. I thought that Alex Winter and Keanu Reeves fell back into the characters so perfectly. Their chemistry is so natural, and the daughters also were just excellent throughout, and I just enjoyed the movie immensely, and it makes me tear up every time. There's the moment towards the end, just very sweet, very fun, and I like the way that it played with the entirety of what you knew the franchise to be. My number 3 was the aforementioned Palm Springs. Like everyone else, I wasn't really sure what to expect out of another Lonely Island film. I think those dudes are genuinely very funny, but I was not expecting the heart that came with it. And Groundhog Day movies are pretty much a dime a dozen. Like, every once in a while, you get gold. If you look at Happy Death Day, you look at the original Groundhog Day, but this one in particular...
Or Live, Die, Repeat.
Yeah, or Live, Die, Repeat. Every one of those...
Tomorrow.
All of those are really good examples of doing it correctly, and this one in particular really stood out. It was fun seeing Andy Samberg and J.K. Simmons back together. It was the first time since I Love You, Man, I think, that they'd... Unless... was Simmons in Brooklyn Nine-Nine at one point? I don't remember.
He does guest star.
He guest starred once. But to see them in a movie again was really fun and really special, and it made me very happy. So, movie is great. Kristen Milotti is a treasure, and I adore her very much. She's the only reason to watch season 9 of How I Met Your Mother, because she's just so great. But in this, she really got to shine, which I was really happy about. And my number 2 is a movie that hasn't been brought up, and that is The Trial of the Chicago 7, written and directed by Aaron Sorkin. I'm a huge Sorkin fan. Like, it's no shock to anyone watching this, anyone on the panel. I love Aaron Sorkin. I think his writing is incredible, and I felt like this movie was very timely and very important for the stuff that was going on. And I thought all the performances were incredible. Michael Keaton, in the 10 minutes that he's even in the movie, deserves a fucking Oscar. And it's fucking bullshit that he doesn't have one already. But if you haven't seen this, check it out. It is streaming on Netflix, and I think it's one of their finest releases to date.
Awesome. All right. My number 4 is a movie that was my number 1 for most of the year until I started seeing some of the end of the year stuff. And that is First Cow. This is one of the last movies I got to see in theaters before the shutdown. It's by Kelly Reichardt, who I think is just one of the best currently working American filmmakers. Her work is so patient and lovely, and this film is just overwhelmingly lovely. It's shot in Academy ratio, which I always love to see, and it has so much going on. I mean, at its core, it's a story about an unexpected friendship between John Magaro and Orion Lee's characters, both of whom are terrific. But it's also sort of a Western fable on the American frontier. It's about the American dream. And one very, very gorgeous cow that I paid $30 to get a cameo message from earlier this year because I'm that guy. But I just love this movie. I find it so beautiful. And I don't want to give anything away, but it's bookended with something that is kind of breathtaking in its construction and the way it surprises and the impact it has on the film. And it just sort of packs a wall up there at the end. My number 3 is a film Tim mentioned earlier, and that is Sound of Metal. I found this film to be so authentic and beautiful. We've seen deaf characters in films before, but I think for me, at least, this feels like the most honest and impactful portrayal of deaf culture. And like Tim mentioned, the way the sound design is used in this film is really breathtaking in its construction, and really does an incredible job of bringing you into what Ruben, Riz Ahmed's character, is going through. And I cannot state enough how just incredible Riz Ahmed is, and Paul Rassi, I'm not 100% sure how to pronounce it, who I did some reading about him, and his parents were both deaf. So although he can hear, he's fluent in sign language, and he spent a lot of his life in deaf society and deaf culture.
And in a rock band that signs all their concerts.
Yeah, he's in a rock band. Exactly. So he just brings this whole other level to it, and I just found it so affecting and beautiful, made with such grace. And like Tim also said, he sort of stole everything I had to say. The last couple minutes are just stunning. So highly, highly recommended. My number 2 film, I don't even know how to talk about this movie. Whatever you think this movie is or is going to be, it's not. And it's Promising Young Woman. This movie is fucking killer. It's like a firework. It exists in its own world. It's doing these audacious, bold things that I can't even describe because I don't want to ruin it. What it really is it's like a screed against toxic masculinity and the boys will be boys culture that lets men get away scot-free being sexual predators and taking advantage of women. But it is presented in such a bizarre, darkly comic way. There are uncomfortable moments, don't get me wrong. Some of it was tough to watch.
Mike?
But it is done with such style and such inventiveness, so much neon-soaked, candy-colored imagery, incredible soundtrack. Carey Mulligan is fucking incredible in this movie. But it like runs the gamut. Like there's a scene that's a Paris Hilton sing-along, and then you have all these incredible male actors in there who I think are intentionally cast because they're actors that people know and like to like sort of help you take your guard down. You got Bo Burnham and Adam Brody and Max Greenfield and Chris Lowell, like recognizable faces. Sam Richardson from Veep. It's a wild, wild movie. I think it's a movie that's going to be discussed for a long time. It makes some choices that I could definitely see people hating or not liking. I thought they were brilliant. And the movie just fucking knocked my socks off. I could definitely see a world where after having seen it a couple more times, it ends up my number 1. But I mean, it's just wild. And I believe I was lucky enough to see a screener, but it hits VOD on the 15th or the 11th or 15th. So soon people will be able to watch it at large. Really, just fucking incredible.
Awesome.
Tim, on to your number one.
My number one is a Shudder exclusive that came out in October 1st, I think, because I think it was my first movie to watch during the month of Halloween. And I absolutely love this movie. I've watched it 2 times since then. And it's called Scare Me. First time director, writer, Josh Rubin. He's also co-starring in the film, and he's great. And I believe he's friends with Video Drew, because Video Drew and I had a conversation about it, and she was like, "Oh yeah, he's my friend." But I mean, the movie, it's kind of a deconstruction of like standard horror tropes. Co-stars also Aya Cash, who was in The Boys, who plays Stormfront in The Boys, and she's great in the movie. But essentially, it's 2 people. One's an aspiring writer, and the other one is a successful writer. They are staying in cabins in a similar location. There's a thunderstorm. They come together in one cabin, and they start telling each other scary stories to see who can scare the other one, essentially. And the fun thing is as they're telling these stories, they kind of come alive in the cabin, but not in a sense of like actually like. It's like for instance, if there's like a werewolf, like you don't see a werewolf, but you see its shadow in the cabin wall, and it's kind of really interesting in that way. And it's also got some humor to it and some meta qualities, and it's also still has like an underlying theme of like being terrifying. I just thought it was really smart, incredibly fun. I was super excited leading up to it, and yeah, I think it's great. If anyone hasn't seen it, I definitely recommend seeing it. It's super fun, and I'm excited to see. Hopefully, Josh Rubin gets to do more stuff. I mean, he showed off that he can direct and he can write, and I would love to see him do some more stuff within the horror genre. So, hopefully, some big things coming for him. So,
very cool.
That's my number one.
Nice.
PJ's having a little bit of internet trouble. He will be rejoining us shortly. But in the meantime, Dan, it's interesting because I sort of, when we're doing this, I like to predict what I think people's lists are going to be. And the film I thought was going to be your number one was your number 2. So I am waiting with bated breath to see what you're pulling out for your number 1.
Oh, you thought my one was going to be Palm Springs?
I did.
This is, well, when I get into the explanation, you'll be able to figure out what it is. I was much like a good friend of our channels. I was very late to the party as far as, much better, dude. You look much better.
You always look good, PJ, but
thank you. I appreciate it.
Of your video.
The sharper he is, the better he looks, is what I'm saying. So I was late to the party with this, and this is probably the biggest cheat that I'm pulling on here. But my number 1 is Hamilton, because there wasn't somehow, and this is, Max, you'll know probably better than anyone else. What year did it actually drop on Broadway?
2015.
So this is a movie, quote unquote, that was 5 years in the making, and somehow I had existed in my life never really knowing any of the cultural touchstones from that musical until I sat down to watch the musical on Disney Plus. Yeah. And so that's why I think one of the reasons it was extra impactful for me. I grew up in a very musical centric household, like had a lot of them, had a lot of Phantom growing up, had a lot of Fiddler on the Roof growing up. And so hearing this, it was never something that like I was purposely avoiding, but it was one of those things like, I think I heard a few bars of Room where it happened, and I think that was literally all I knew from the entire musical. And like, as I'm watching just the first act on Disney Plus, I'm like almost half crying through part of it, because I'm like, it doesn't make any sense that this is as good as it is. Like, my brain had a hard time comprehending just what I was imbibing into my eyes and ears. And so as soon as I sat down to go through this list, I was just like, well, that has to be my number 1, because it's the only thing that like I've gone out of my way to watch multiple times. I literally had to buy the soundtrack a couple of days later on Amazon just so I could put it on my phone and keep listening to it. And
I think just cast album.
Yeah. The original Broadway cast.
Soundtracks are for movies, cast albums are for musicals. Sorry.
Sorry. Terminology
Jesus,
not here, man.
Get it fucking together, Dan.
Oh. Shame. Where's my bell? Shame. But no, and so like literally, and it'll pop up on my phone randomly because I'll just shuffle albums and be like, well, I know what I'm doing for the next 3 hours. I'm just listening to this again. So it was one of those things where it was, sure, you could not call it a movie, but with as up and down as 2020 was, like just that, and it was like clearly it wasn't as big as when it first came out on Broadway, but there was a solid month where it was always being discussed by everybody. So I feel no shame putting it in my number one, just because it was like, for me, that's what it was.
I think that's a great choice. And before we get to PJ, who's number one, I figured out by process of elimination, I just wanted to mention that there were two filmed versions of stage shows that dropped this year that I thought were brilliantly done. One being Hamilton, and the other being Spike Lee's production or filming of David Byrne's American Utopia. And I would argue that what Spike Lee did with American Utopia is more in the realm of actually making it a documentary as opposed to Hamilton, which is just a pro shot. But because I was fortunate enough to be able to see both of those live on stage, I decided not to include them on my list, although both were some of the most incredible stuff I've seen this year, and particularly American Utopia, which is available on HBO. If you haven't seen it, it is fucking incredible. Just so good. All right, PJ, let's see if I knew what your number one is. I think it's a film we've all mentioned already.
Yeah, everyone's literally mentioned this movie at this point. And my number one of the year was Pixar's Soul.
I knew it.
It was so fucking life affirming. I thought that it was like, I always like Pixar. I look forward to their movies year in and year out. And it was one that I had my eye on for a while, and it just like knocked me for a loop. I thought it was easily their most heartfelt and most emotional and their most adult that they had ever done in a lot of ways. And so I really contend that it is their first non-kids film. It was their first movie made for adults that kids could watch. And I thought that it really took just giant swings at doing something that really feels and reflects not death, but life. And I think that's what was so cool. It was a movie about someone who dies, but is a reflection on life and how important it is to live. And I thought that it could have easily been about trying to figure out what the afterlife is like, but instead it was about trying to live your best life and trying to figure out how to be a better person within yourself and live the life that you deserve. And there was something really, really poetic and really beautiful about that.
Now I have Chicago stuck in my head because of what you just said.
You're welcome. It worked for me on a level that I was not expecting fully, and that's not a dig or anything. It just, I've been in a weird flux the last year and a half. I've learned a lot in the last year and a half. These guys have been there every step of the way, and so they know that kind of stuff hits me in a very particular way, and this one in particular just knocked me for a loop, man. It was over and I was a crying mess, and I loved everything about it, and it just felt so goddamn life affirming, and I love this movie. I can't recommend it enough.
It's a great choice. I mean, we all loved it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, like I always say when I make these sort of lists, like you could really
you could move it around. Like
you can nitpick over the order. It's ultimately just like sort of arbitrary.
Yeah.
All right. So we once again find ourselves in a position where Brandy knew exactly what my number one is going to be. Like
I knew.
I know.
I knew.
It is Nomadland by Chloe Zhao. Yes, it's pronounced Chloe Zhao. I would love it especially as she's going to start getting nominated for more and more awards, if people pronounced her name properly. I know it's spelled Zhao, it's Zhao. Much like Kelly Reichardt, I think she's an incredible chronicler of modern America. And what she did both with this film and her previous film, The Rider, which I also highly, highly recommend, is she uses non-actors and real locations and natural light. So these films have an inherent authenticity that I find so enveloping and capturing. In this film, she did hire two actors, the first being Frances McDormand, who is incredible in this film, as she so often is. The other being David Strathairn, who has a smaller part, but is also very, very good. And what I like about both The Rider and this film, but I'll focus more on this, is she's illuminating a light on aspects of American culture that we do not often see shown in any sort of art or entertainment. In this film, it's about the nomad lifestyle. And, you know, it's based on a book, and a lot of the actors, or non-actors, but they're now actors, some of them are brilliant, in the film are basically playing themselves. The names they have in the film are their names in real life, and they are nomads. So they live this life. And they helped work on the script and build out this very authentic world. I found this film so empathetic, so beautiful, so touching and powerful. One of the truly great films about America today. And every element of it, the cinematography, the score is not original. It's selections of classical music from a relatively recent album, but they are so beautiful. The best way I can describe it is it's really like cinema as poetry. Like it's the same feeling I get when you're reading a great poem.
Yep.
It just took my breath away. I'm so happy I got to see an early screening of it, and I cannot wait for more people to see it. And I sincerely, sincerely hope that Chloe Zhao wins Best Director and becomes the second woman to win it. This was an incredible year for women filmmakers. 4 of the films on my top 10 list were directed by women. I read an article recently that in 2020, more films than ever were directed by women, but the fact that it was still only 16% of the films that came out is fucking ridiculous. That's more than ever is absurd. I just, but anyways, yeah, Nomadland is gorgeous. And an easy choice is my number one.
I can't wait to see this. Every time you've talked about it, it's gotten me more and more excited.
Yeah.
So what we've learned from this list is Maxwell has great taste in movies. He gets to see them early, and we're all really fucking jealous.
Yes, that is 100% what we've learned today.
Happy 2021, everyone.
I have a couple honorable mentions I'll name really quickly, and then you guys can too if you want.
Hell yeah.
So first, and this just missed the list, and it was going to make the list until it unfortunately just didn't, and that's Da 5 Bloods by Spike Lee. I think it's a great movie. I like how it sort of balances being like a Treasure of Sierra Madre-esque adventure / treasure hunt with a very pointed social and commentary on race. I think Delroy Lindo is incredible. It's a little bit messy, but I found charm in its messiness. It's one of those movies that has so many ideas and so many things going on that there is no way to make it all work. And because of that, I think it does all work. The next is Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, which is available on Netflix. Viola Davis is great. It's an adaptation of an August Wilson play, but George C. Wolfe, who is primarily a stage director. Yeah, Mike, I think you came in late. Wolfwalkers was my number 5 on my top 10 of the year. Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, like I said, adaptation of an August Wilson play. It has a certain staginess to it, but I think George C. Wolfe, who directed it, did an incredible job of bringing the life out of it. And to me, the highlight of the film is Chadwick Boseman. This is his final performance. He is gut-wrenchingly brilliant in this film. As brilliant as I think Riz Ahmed is, I would love to see Chadwick win the Oscar posthumously because I think we're going to have a lot more time to see Riz deliver great work. And it just pains me when you watch this movie to see what you just know how much more Chadwick had to give and he wasn't able to give to us. And it's so smart about how difficult it was to make authentic Black art in a racist world. A couple others that I'm not going to talk about as much as those two. Birds of Prey, which I just thought was an absolute blast, also directed by a woman. Christopher Nolan's Tenet, which I don't love quite as much as PJ, but I like more than a lot of people do. I think it's a blast. The score is great. Robert Pattinson's a fucking movie star. The Wolf of Snow Hollow, which is a brilliant and clever twist on the werewolf movie by Jim Cummings. Highly recommended. And finally, Host, which we've already talked about a couple times.
Oh, go ahead, Tim.
I just figured we were going to do the same order.
Oh, okay. Go for it.
Mine, I was going to mention Color Out of Space, which was a weird cosmic horror film adapted from a H.P. Lovecraft story, directed by Richard Stanley, making his return, his long return to feature directing.
And it's got the kid in it.
Got my faction mate, or former faction mate, whatever, because factions don't exist right now again, I guess. Brendan the Kid Meyer, Nicolas Cage is great in it. Yeah, I just think the movie is super weird and super bizarre and crazy, and I had a hell of a time watching it. One of the last movies I saw in theaters here this year as well. Let's see, Trial of the Chicago 7, which I mentioned earlier. It's great. I also have The Five Bloods in there. I watched that this week for the first time as well. I really liked it. I don't think the action stuff worked for me as much in the movie. It just didn't work for me, honestly. Like some of the scenes that were supposed to have a certain effect, and they kind of came off as kind of like unintentionally humorous. But overall, I think Delroy Lindo is fantastic in the movie. I think all the characters are great, but Delroy specifically is really, really, really awesome in that movie. And his character is not what I thought he was going to be whatsoever in that movie. Not at all. Not at all. Let's see. The Lodge, which is a horror film, and it's on Hulu. Definitely not going to be for everyone. Definitely super dark, but I really enjoyed it. And then I have 2 Shudder films I wanted to shout out that came out this year. One is The Beach House, which is another weird cosmic kind of like environmental horror film that is really good. And then Spiral, not the sequel, not the Saw film, but there's a movie called Spiral that came out that deals with like kind of like a cult group in a town, and it's got a really interesting twist on like kind of like what's going on with the reasoning certain people are targeted, in this community. And I really enjoyed it, and I thought it was great. So yeah, that's
Spiral's very good. I'm glad I watched that on your recommendation. I'm glad I did.
Yeah, it's good.
Dan, you got any honorable mentions?
Not really. I kind of had to stretch to make it to a full 10. So I had like of the 5 or 6 other movies that were on there, like a few bumped around. Like Enola Holmes was kind of a fun watch. Wonder Woman had a real quick, like an in and out of my head as far as making it, but I didn't enjoy it as much as some other people did. And I made the list and then I already exit out of it. So it's like,
fair enough.
I got close. Yeah.
I wanted to, one more quick thing. I didn't put Hamilton on my list for, I think, reasons similar to like, well, other people may not, but I don't think there's anything wrong with putting it on your list. But had I put it on my list, it would have been very high. It would have been in my top 5. So it's incredible. So yeah, Hamilton's great.
All right, PJ, what are your honorable mentions?
So I'm going to not mention any of the ones that everyone else brought up just because you guys already shouted them out. I think it's pretty obvious which ones I would have chosen. I am going to shout out Bad Boys for Life, which had no reason to be nearly as good as it ended up being 17 years later. It is the best of that franchise by a considerable margin. I'm also big on Tiger Tail, which was a Netflix original. If you guys haven't seen it, please check it out. Ip Man 4. Yes, I am making sure that I shout out Ip Man 4, the finale. I adore those movies. Donnie Yen is just a fucking treasure. Please check it out. And I'm going to go ahead and shout out one that I just want people to see. It's a much smaller film, but it was called Standing Up, Falling Down. This was a movie that I was surprised to be as moved by as I was. It stars Ben Schwartz and Billy Crystal, and it was a movie that really hit me in a very, very cool place, man. I like that movie a lot. And also, Enola Holmes, also on Netflix, is a ton of fun and worth checking out.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we've been talking about all this stuff for 2.5 hours, and I think it really goes to show that despite all of the garbage that the year held, there still managed to be a lot of great cinema from a lot of unexpected and exciting places. And I would put this top 10 against any top 10 from previous years. I loved these films very much, and a lot of the other ones were mentioned. That being said, I'll talk about a couple of the things we have coming up on the network in the next couple of days, and then we'll say goodnight to you. Tomorrow night, we're doing a watch along of Miracle. Great hockey movie starring Kurt Russell, available on both Netflix and Disney+. Wednesday, Sunny Soundtracks is doing a really fun and devastatingly difficult show about our favorite songs of all time. That's myself, PJ, Chris Clark, Tim Franco, Jen Kemp, and Max Bartos from the Off-Broadway production of Sing Street. We'll all be naming our top 10 favorite songs of all time. And as I mentioned, I don't know when, Chris and us have decided we're pretty much going to do this every 6 months. Yep. So we can mention new songs each time, and also hopefully get some other people in there, because there are so many other fun people who I would love to hear their top 10s. And then Friday, watch along of Steve Jobs by Danny Boyle, starring Michael Fassbender, written by Aaron Sorkin. We have Book Nook coming up. Get your copy of The Runes of Gorland, The Ranger's Apprentice. And for those who have been asking, Front Center Mezzanine will be returning on Thursday, the 14th of January. And we'll be going back to our hopefully bi-weekly schedule, assuming I can continue to book guests. Now that certain TV productions and whatnot and film have gone back into action, the availability of certain people is more challenging than it was in the thick of quarantine, but I'm doing my best to continue to get guests. And what we may do is in weeks when we can't get guests, do highlight episodes where we pick a favorite musical and break it down. Not like Suddenly Soundtracks where we go song by song, but talking about the show at large with people who are fans of that show. So I just want to continue celebrating and spreading my love of Broadway with everyone. So that's the plan for that. Tim, where can everyone find you online?
You can find me on Twitter, tfranco84. Those numbers are my birthday.
So I've been wondering this whole time, why does it say Tim Franco 21? Because it's 2021?
Yeah, Tim Franco 21. I'm the 2021 version of Tim Franco. Okay. And during my sign out, I wanted to shout out, I remembered one more TV show that I wanted to shout out, but Netflix has a series called Somebody Feed Phil, and it really dropped a new season. And that show is great. It's a travel culinary show with Phil Rosenthal, who's known as, he's the creator of Everybody Loves Raymond. But he is just a joy to watch. He's so ridiculous. His facial expressions. He's so emotive with his face, and it's incredible. And if you like those types of shows, and even if you don't, you'll probably like it because of him. So Somebody Feed Phil.
I purposely didn't include nonfiction stuff or reality stuff on my list, but if we're talking about travel shows, I also highly recommend Taste the Nation with Padma Lakshmi on Hulu, one of the co-hosts of Top Chef. I loved the cultural aspect she brought to it, and every episode she goes to a different city and explores like a very specific food culture, and it's a great, fascinating show. Highly recommended. Dan, where can everyone find your handsome mug on the internets?
Here occasionally. You can find me on Twitter, and I use Twitter the most at ohhidanai. Same thing for Instagram, but I very rarely use that. So those places. And then PJ? Eventually we'll do watch-alongs of things that I'm in, because I am in a few things on Prime. I think they're on Prime that you can look and find. Those are fun. So eventually we'll do them for watch-alongs.
Yes, I love it. PJ?
You guys can find me on Twitter and Instagram at PJ_Campbell. You can find me here hanging out with all the cool people, and that's always fun. And you can find me at the Movie Trivia Schmodown, which is currently on its hiatus. Be nice to the writers. We're only human. I'm enjoying this very nice break from everything, and I look forward to next season. But again, be nice to the writers. We're only human. That's all I ask. And watch Curb Your Enthusiasm. I should have shouted it out earlier. Season 10 was awesome.
Cool. You can find me on Twitter and Letterboxd at Cinemaxwell, Instagram at Cinemaxwell Inc. Like I said earlier, I'm going to post a link to a blog post I'm just going to publish now that goes more in depth on my top 10 and some other stuff. And we will see you all tomorrow night for Miracle. Have a great Sunday evening. Thanks for unwinding with us.
Please leave this office.
Do we get any sort of souvenir?
Get out of my office!
I'll be back.
I gotta pay.
Throw me a frickin' bone here. I'm the boss. He's the info.
Shut the fuck up, Donnie.
Heavy is the head that eats the crayons. I'm gonna take a nap. See you in 10 hours.
Dude, I almost had you. You almost had me. You never had me.
I like your style, dude.
End of line.